Roll call, please, for quorum at the moment.
Alderman
We'll go from
Williamson?
there.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Here.
Alderman Dolick?
Here.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Here.
And I understand Laura Messer, Alderman Messer is not going to be present
By
today.
previous notification. So we have a quorum. We are the City Council. I'm Mayor Nick Helmer. We're meeting at the City Council chambers at the hallowed halls of Prospect Heights City Hall. It's October 22nd, and it's approximately 6:32 p.m. The reason I say all that is because you're all on TV, and we don't want to have the wrong date when we say you're here, but you weren't here, or you weren't here, or whatever. So welcome all. I'm glad you came. Thank you for taking your time. We have a Pledge of Allegiance coming up, and we will choose this gentleman right here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Can you do that? I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. All right, if we could have the Reverend Joe Commanda lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance from the Glory House Church. Good evening. Nice to see you again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the great opportunity. Every time we come in here, we see it as a privilege to pray over our city and also to be able to say a word of blessing over our city council. We value this city council a lot, and our church continues to pray for you and Mr. Mayor. We pray for strength and energy and wisdom as you are leading this city to our better days, I should say, the days of prosperity, peace, and harmony. Let us pray. Father God, we want to bless you tonight. We thank you for yet another city council meeting. Lord, I thank you for choosing Mr. Mayor and all the men and women of our city council. Lord, I thank you for I know that all authority comes from you, and you are the one that has chosen them. Now tonight, I pray, oh God, for Mr. Mayor. I pray for supernatural strength. I pray, oh God, that you will give him supernatural ability for him to lead us, lead this great city. But God, I also pray for our city council members. I pray, God, for divine protection over their lives. I also pray for wisdom, supernatural wisdom that only you can give. Father, I also pray for our beloved city, the city of Prospect Heights. We pray for prosperity, the kind of prosperity that only you can give. But God, I also pray for peace, the unspeakable peace, unexplainable peace. I also pray for harmony, Father. Harmony in every area, in every facet of this city and of the affairs of this city. Above all, oh God, I pray for unity. Unity in our differences. Give us to be united as one. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you so much. All right, Joe, you want to take it from there, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. First item is the approval of the minutes of the October 8th regular workshop meeting. Any corrections, additions? If not, and we will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Presentations. We have a presentation tonight from Mr. Jeff Julian of Harper College.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Really excited to be here. I wanted to share some information with you about the college's campus master plan and our upcoming referendum that's on the November ballot. I'll be brief. I know you have a lot on your agenda. I just wanted to give you a quick reminder of Harper College. We serve about 500, well, our district includes more than 520,000 people in 23 communities, and we serve approximately 35,000 students each year. We're really focused on student success and student completion. If you've seen Dr. Ender speak or been in his company, you'll know that he often talks about how important it is to compete in today's job market. You have to have some type of post-secondary education, whether it's a certificate or a degree. So we believe really strongly in making sure that we help our students complete so they have a successful future. We also really believe strongly in regional partnerships. So we work closely with our local high schools, our four-year universities, and businesses and employers on a variety of initiatives like our apprenticeship program. Our partnerships with approximately 300 companies allow us to provide apprenticeship programs on our campus with unique hands-on training to teach high-tech skills and things like manufacturing, healthcare, and information technology. One of our really important partnerships is right here in Prospect Heights with the Learning and Career Center. And we offer career certificates there in phlebotomy, CNA, hotel management, office assistant, and logistics. And your community members can also take advantage of free ESL and high school equivalency preparation classes, as well as other employment and support services we provide there. Obviously, our goal is to keep college affordable. We've done that through innovative programs like the Promise program that allows students to earn up to 2 years of tuition if they maintain solid grades and meet other benchmarks. So we just recently completed our 50th year. We were celebrating that anniversary all last year. And one of the ways that we did that was by getting out into the community. So we had a lot of conversations with our community members that allowed us to get some feedback from them about what they'd like to see for the future of Harper College. So we took a lot of that feedback, included it in our next campus master plan. And what we heard from that outreach and engagement was really 3 priorities that crystallized for us. One was to continue to drive economic opportunity to the district, to make sure that we're preparing students for today's high-tech jobs, and that we maintained the campus infrastructure. So with each of those priorities, we assigned projects to those, and then we've found a way to fund those priorities without raising taxes, and that's through that referendum in November. So I'll tell you a little bit about those priorities and the projects, and then explain the funding mechanism. So that first priority, again, is driving economic opportunity in our community, and we're going to address that by building a new facility that will allow for innovation and collaboration between our businesses and our four-year university partners. So we'll relocate some of our business resources like customized training, small business development center, our fast track program. Our university center partnerships will be housed there, and those allow our students to get four-year bachelor's degrees right on Harper's campus through our partnerships with NIU, Roosevelt, and DePaul. So it'll really be a place where our residents can keep their skills current for today's workforce. That second priority, educating for high-tech jobs, we're going to do that by making sure our facilities and curriculum are modernized in key areas: health careers, manufacturing, accounting, business, early education. Just a couple of quick numbers. By 2024, there'll be 1 million job openings for nurses, and in the next decade, 3.5 million manufacturing jobs will be open. So we really want to make sure that we can continue to prepare our community to take advantage of those opportunities. And finally, that third priority, maintaining campus infrastructure. We have a really safe and functional student learning environment at the college, and we want to make sure that we invest in that and maintain it. So that includes making sure that the roofs, the plumbing, the electrical operations are maintained. It also makes sure that we continue to invest in technologies that will help us to deliver education efficiently. So because Harper's been fiscally responsible, we're able to fund those priorities and those projects without raising taxes. We can do that through renewing existing bonds. We issued bonds in the year 2000, and those are due to be paid off in 2020. Those bonds account for approximately $23 in property taxes on a home that's a $250,000 market value home. So what we would do is issue new bonds that would keep those taxes at the same level, and the college would be able to fund an estimated $180 million without raising taxes to fund those 3 priorities. So we've placed that referendum on the November ballot, which will allow voters and our community members to have the final say in approving the plan that they helped us create. We have additional information on our website at harpercollege.edu/strongfuture. I shared some informational cards with Joe, and he passed those out, and they have additional information for you, including the dollar amount breakdown that's attached to each of those priorities. And with that, I'll close, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the plan.
Council members, Alderman Williamson, please.
No question. I think that, let me ask you one question.
Sure.
On the brochure, it says that you will put on sunset. It's $23.
Right.
That would be saved. Is that per tax bill?
Yeah, that would be annually for that homeowner.
Annually?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving down the line, Alderman Rosenthal, please.
Just a few questions. Like your presentation, it was very good.
Thank you.
I didn't hear you mention anything about IT jobs. Is that in your plan? Because there's certainly a shortage developing there. I like the idea. I'm familiar with the situation with the nursing shortage.
Sure.
And that's very, very important now.
Right. We've picked out some key programs that we're highlighting right now, but certainly there's flexibility in this plan to allow us to address other, job opportunities or career fields as they emerge. So certainly, I'm sure our academic folks are keeping an eye on those different program offerings.
Can you tell me, is there going to be a specific focus for the campus that's here in Prospect Heights? What is their focus going to be? And what student body are you looking to attract there?
That's a good question. I would have to go back and talk to my colleagues in the academic affairs area in terms of what they see for the future of the Prospect Heights campus specifically. It's not addressed in this campus master plan, but again, that doesn't mean that we couldn't alter plans or add things based on emerging trends. But I can definitely follow up on that and get back
It
to
would
you.
certainly be interesting
Absolutely.
being in our community.
For sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
And my final thing is I like your strategy of how you plan to refund the bonds. That's very good. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Dolick.
No questions, great presentation,
Thank
thank you.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Just a couple things.
Sure.
I'm a graduate of Harper, got my
Excellent.
associates there. Went
Fantastic.
to Northern and got 2 more. If it wasn't for Harper, I wouldn't have never gotten to NIU except through your programs you had for once you graduate.
Very good.
You go to your partner state schools. 2 daughters go there. One took phlebotomy at that Prospect Heights campus, Larry. So they teach a lot of healthcare at the Prospect Heights campus.
Absolutely.
My daughter finished a phlebotomy program there, and got her associates, and the other one's going to finish there in the spring.
That's great.
And then go on
Congratulations.
to- Yeah, so Harper was good to me, good to my family. The only thing you got to fix, you better make sure you earmark a lot of money for parking. Always been a problem at the school. 30 years ago when I was there, and now that's probably your biggest infrastructure problem, but great school otherwise.
I
Good
will
job.
definitely share that note about parking. I can tell you, I've been in higher ed for 12 years, and I've heard about parking at every school
Right,
I've been
well,
at,
that's
so,
bad, right.
but I will take that back. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
I was just going to add, I've taken a number of continuing education classes there, and they've been great for me in my career, so I'm very much in support of
That's great to
Harper.
hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clerk Wendy?
I just wanted to follow up on something that Larry raised.
Sure.
A lot of residents are asking me, what are the benefits to the Prospect Heights campus? And it would really be helpful if you, I know you said you're going to go check it out.
Sure,
But if you could provide that information, in a reasonably short period of time, it would be helpful because a lot of people are asking.
Can I just ask, are they asking that question specifically related to the referendum in this new plan, or just in general?
They're asking with respect to the referendum specifically about what enhancements there would be to the Prospect Heights campus and,
Sure.
or what improvements.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, it's not addressed specifically in this campus master plan, but I will verify that for
Okay,
you,
thank you so much.
for sure.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? If not, great presentation.
Okay.
I've been over to some of the open houses in the last few years, almost every time, and it's impressive. It's come a long way already, and
Excellent.
you've got bigger plans for it as you're going ahead. So congratulations to everyone there, and should be great. Should be a real asset to the city of Prospect Heights.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, item B is follow-up. Last time we discussed solid waste with the city council, it was to advise that next year our contract ends. And so therefore, we were getting direction about whether to go forward with a request for proposal and what those parameters might be as far as yard waste collection, other changes, maintaining the senior discount, and so forth. Since then, we developed a competitive request for proposal process, very concerned about the integrity of it, that it'd be a very honest and straightforward process. We received 5 responses, and from those 3 that had the lowest prices and most responsive submittals were selected for follow-up. And I want to call out, because it's a good story to tell tonight, but Peter Falcone has spent a lot of time really working over a master spreadsheet on this of comparison. And also a person who's not here tonight, but Dave Van Voren from Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County. And both Peter and Dave approached this as getting the best response as far as service and price for our citizens. And I think we've done that. It's a good story to talk about tonight because we're going to talk about reductions in pricing. There's also a concern, well, we've set this contract up for 7 years because whoever gets it, there's an investment in equipment and other costs, so we want to make sure that it works for the city, but it also works for the vendor. And because of that, there's also concern, well, what, sometimes kind of like insurance, you might get a good rate for this year, but what is it in years 2, 3, 4, and 5? And I think we've protected that as well. So at that rate, I'm going to turn it over to Peter, and also just to really protect the integrity of this process, I will tell you tonight that there are 3 finalists, and they are excellent companies, excellent companies. These are proven professionals. They know what they're doing. They've got good track record, and they serve other cities, including our own, very well. But tonight, because of that, just like symphony orchestras, oftentimes when they select somebody to play violin or horn, they do a blind test, so nobody can see who it is. And that's the way we're going to approach it tonight. So Peter's going to talk about vendors 1, 2, and 3, and you'll get a sense of what their proposals are.
I'd like to ask Kevin if we can do this, even if it's at the end of the meeting, to do it in executive session, because there's no way we could talk about this and keep the integrity of the process in place, I don't think. Because this is a contract that we're in the middle of negotiating. It wasn't a sealed bid contract where it was low bidder, low responsible bidder. There's a lot of moving parts to it that I think we'd be best served to talk in executive session about, not from the standpoint of keeping anything quiet or secret, but I think that, like you had said, Joe, in order to talk about these people, instead of using contractor A, B, and C, or 1, 2, and 3, there's some specific things about proposals in here that might be proprietary, I think, and we'd be sharing it with everybody if we talked about it.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't believe there's an exception that would apply, but you give me, maybe we can move this to the end of the meeting, this discussion to the end of the meeting, and in the interim, I can see if my analysis changes.
Okay. Are you okay with that, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think I'll leave it to the attorney because I don't really know, does it qualify for executive session, for example? I don't know.
My initial reaction is it doesn't, but like I said, I will review that
All right.
and let you know if we can move this to the end
All
of the
right,
meeting.
well, let's do that, and if everybody's happy with that, we can move on.
Which would bring us to our next item, 7, appointments, confirmations, and proclamations. And we have the proposed appointment of Mr. Mark Maloff to the Ad hoc Prospect Heights City Redevelopment Committee.
Is Mark here tonight? I know, step to the podium. You're the guy we're talking about now, so might as well.
Take it easy on me.
I met Mark here at City Hall some time ago. We discussed the things that I'd like to see happen and the city benefits from. And you're living close to the library, is that right?
Yes.
How long have you been there?
A little over 20 years.
20 years. So you've got good experience in the city. And what is your background regarding work?
With regards to the city of Prospect Heights, I've been here a little over 20 years, but my in-laws, the Moravas, obviously have a little bit of history here. So my wife grew up here as one of the Morava family. And, but my history is I've spent about 35 years in development and residential construction. So I did a lot of residential construction, but also commercial construction with the major builders throughout Chicago. I was president of Town and Country Homes for a while, the biggest builder in Chicago at the time, excuse me, and several other companies. And we would do, while they were residential developments, we would also look at commercial components to some of those sites and how they would be best utilized for those areas. So having watched for the last 35 years, I guess, the city of Prospect Heights and gaining some valuable or invaluable comments from my father-in-law, who watched Prospect Heights go from gravel roads to repaving of streets. And so when we talked about opportunities for, he was one of those people that the Walgreens was like a wooden stake through his heart because his little downtown area was gone. And so I think there may be opportunity to create a downtown development that will take Prospect Heights, which I think you've done a great job with, to another level, maybe giving it a downtown area. So I'm happy to contribute. I spent 8 years on the Park District Board and chose not to run about a year ago. I figure that after a couple of years, that's long enough, and someone else can jump in and, you know, commit themselves and their ideas to the next stage. So I appreciated the opportunity, and I know a lot about development. I know a lot about planning, from buying $200 million farms to $25 million or 25-acre sites in downtown communities. So I've kind of been involved in all that planning and strategy, and you know, appreciated the confidence that you showed in me. And if I can help, I'm happy to do so.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I was pleased with our discussions earlier, a couple of months ago now, and I'm glad you're here tonight. Any questions from the Alderman, please? So,
Just one quick question to you, Mayor. How many people do we currently have on the redevelopment
I was
committee?
just getting to that.
Thank you.
The committee will be made up of 7 members. You're the number 7. And we have some highly qualified, including you, people that can, I think, will be a big help for the future development of what we're talking about. So what will happen now is that everyone will get a letter that states the members' names and probably emails. And we want to get past this election coming up on the 6th. And after that, we'll have an initial meeting, more for introduction and ideas than for any shovel work. So I'm looking forward to that meeting, and I'll keep you advised. I'm appointing you, however, the council has to ratify that appointment. So I will call for a motion to accept Mr. Malouf's application and appointment to the Downtown Redevelopment Group.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion approval, and can we do all in favor, or do you want a roll call, Mr. Lawyer?
It can do a voice vote. We're all in favor. Do we have a second, though?
I'll second Larry's motion.
All right, yeah, we did have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay,
Thank you, Mark.
Do we have any public comment on agenda matters?
We have one resident who's, I don't see him here, and it's not an agenda matter, but before the agenda.
Okay,
right.
for later, thank you.
Yeah.
Is
Thank you.
that a request for a meeting? Is that the one?
No.
It's not River Trails then?
Yes, it is about river trails.
Okay, so that'll come when?
Later in
He
the
asked,
agenda.
he
Later.
actually asked for a private meeting with the alderman and myself. The alderman is not here tonight. So we'll deal with that. Let's move on.
The next item is reports. And starting off, we have Jim Kiefer, Director of Chicago Executive Airport.
Good evening, everyone. Name's Jim Kiefer. Thanks for having me back 2 months in a row. Our committee, our directors and our staff has gotten back just from NBAA. I believe the mayor was there, I was not. It's a yearly convention for the business aviation community, and the #1 highlight of the conference was the strike down of the privatization for air traffic controllers. So we, CBAA, the Chicago Business Aviation Association, the NBAA, they've worked really hard on fighting this, and we all believe strongly that it's the best thing for the country and for the safety of everybody that flies. So that's a big kudos to those people who worked on it, and we just said no to ATC, and that's the privatization. So hopefully that's been put to bed and it goes away. I'm happy to announce that Congress, on a very strong bipartisan level, which is odd these days, that they've approved the FAA funding bill for years to come, and that was a big achievement. I'm glad they could finally put their differences aside and vote overwhelmingly on it. So that's a great thing. We're entered our phase 3 of our master plan, and that's going to lead to a series of meetings with our significant investment groups, where we gather the city, the village of Wheeling, the FBOs, the staff, and other interested parties, and we talk about where we're going to go from here. So part of that program is the TIPS program, and TIPS stands for Transportation Improvement Programs, and whether it's the resurfacing of runway 1230, that's our next big project, and we're looking into the widening of runway 1230. Hopefully that relieves some of the pressure off of the residents in our neighborhood and to the Wheeling neighborhood. So that's on our long-term project. Customs, we put a back burner on for 6 months until we figure out where we're going to grow or sustain, constrain our growth. We don't want to put a building in where we might do something little jigsaw on the runway or the buildings around it. So that's a good thing for us. 6 months is the cutoff of when we're 95% sure that where we want to put the customs is in a great area, but we don't want to build a $2 million building and have it, it's in our way. So the other great thing is, for a lot of residents of both villages, city and the village, is our sound attenuation program. So the FAA, we've asked them to put up $3.3 million, and because the state won't pump any money into it based on the formula, so we'll have to come up with $340,000 initially, and we have budgeted that amount in this year's budget and the next year's budget, and it's a long-awaited program for the residents of Wheeling and Prospect Heights, and maybe even a little for Mount Prospect. But so that's a good thing that's been a long time coming. We're excited. We are in the final stages of purchasing DuraPave property, and we just got an invitation from Lewis University to hold some classes in that building, so that we, just like Harper, we want to unite all the teaching facilities, and especially in aviation, which is our mantra, where we get students to come in and pump into the aviation community. So we're excited about that. Wheeling High School is involved also with a similar program, because we're short on mechanics and pilots. And so that's about it. Everything else is well at the airport, and hopefully it never gets too boring. all the good news. So I'll open up to any questions, concerns, comments.
Jim, I'm sorry.
Alderman Rosenthal?
I'm sorry. The funding for the attenuation program, is that coming from the new appropriation that you talked about earlier?
So what happens is, we put it on our budget, and TIPS keeps on evolving. So a lot of these TIPS requirements have already been put into the hopper. So the federal FAA has come back and said, we are giving you so much this year. Is that amount locked in? I don't think so, but it's a good start, and we have put out for a proposal for contractors. So we've interviewed 4 contractors to start this process, and yes, the initial funding is there on both sides. So instead of a 90% from the FAA, 5% from the state, and 5% from us, this program is 90 federal and 10% us. And I'm not sure why state's not involved, but
When will you know for sure?
as far as what the total amount?
Yeah.
It's a running total. This program will not, it's not a one-term, it's just a continuation. And in our budget, we finally had enough money to set aside money for it, because we've talked about it for years. And we never got anything because we never put matching funds towards it.
Good.
So it's a good start.
Alderman Dolick?
On that same program, what is the rough time frame on that? Because that's probably one of the more popular questions on the east side from my residents.
That I'm not sure of. We are out for contract. By the end of this month, we'll have voted on, or beginning of next month, we'll vote on that contractor. And then they'll sit. We've hired, who did a company, Mead and Hunt. They're the ones who did the noise compatibility study. They're going to be our owner's rep, and they will determine how fast it'll go. So I can't really say, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble as saying, hey, you're going to have new windows next week.
Right.
So it's very cautious, and I don't want
Yeah, I
to
understand.
put my foot in my mouth.
It's a good step forward, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's you being on the committee, you understand.
Yeah.
Alderman Ludwigson?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Williamson?
I have no questions, thank you.
I did spend time with Chairman Court Harris from your organization, with DuPage and Gary and Waukegan. And the main points of discussion were really down to 2. One is the cost of satisfying, where to build and how much to spend on customs, a customs building. And the numbers got pushed around by all 3 of us. I think we were in the $2 million range. Gary was in the $1.8 million range, and DuPage said they're being asked for $5 million. So that's not a done deal yet, but we have to be cautious from the standpoint, is it really worth it to spend that kind of money? How many customs services do you get a month?
So we do 500 operations customs, and there's a hidden profit in that the FBO services all these major corporations. So even if you don't see a customs type operation, if we said, hey, we're not going to play, we don't need customs, those 500, then the FBO's question, I can't bring certain amount of clients here, whether it's the Allstate that brings in somebody from overseas or heads overseas. All these major corporations that use our airport require customs. And we could be penny wise, pound foolish by cutting out customs, saves, $2 million. But that's not a forward way of thinking, and we need those FBOs. They generate a lot of tax revenues for our school districts. They generate a lot of taxes, and we don't want, we're an FBO, we have 3 FBOs, and they're all in favor for it. Our board is all in favor. And in reference to Gary's a different type of operations for customs, and they were able to use existing space, existing building inside a terminal, and we don't have that option. So sure, they only did 1.7. They're also getting free money from the city of Chicago when they went this regional air authority. And so just like, reference for Title IX, the big boy, being O'Hare, gives money to Gary and kind of sprinkles a lot of good projects their way. just to keep the politics out of it. But, and then as far as, we were at 1.7 for a 5,000 square foot. It jumped to 2.7, and that was because we have to, there's a big cost for creating a new apron so that the aircraft can get to that customs. So that figure, we got them down to 2 million, hopefully less, based on value engineering. And hopefully, we pull that money aside from the apron, and then the cost doesn't seem so bad. Whereas Gary's got brand-new runways and aprons at the, when O'Hare users pay for it. So they had a little different funding mechanism. So we are very cognizant of the costs, but we firmly believe across the board that we need a customs facility. And I haven't heard anybody say no on our board.
The other issue that was talked about was the flow-through, the pass-through of of gas taxes, which to us represents $150,000 that flows to the city. Everyone had a problem with that. And the first thing that 4 people said was, the plan is to funnel that money to O'Hare and to Ryan. So I'd like to hear that story differently someday. We need that.
And I believe firmly there will be. I mean, there's a lot of strong local politicians besides the Madigans of the world. And I believe we have a strong state that is going to do the right thing, whether it's Rockford, Prospect Heights, whether it's downstate, Decatur, you name it. I believe it's going to work out to the best. The politics are really ugly right now, and hopefully this election kind of, slows down the ramping up of certain strong Chicago-ish type enterprises. And I think that hopefully we'll get our money back.
Well, Madigan is pretty open about this. He wants all the money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're pretty open about it, too.
Yeah, exactly.
We want our money.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, anyone else? Once again, thank you for your time and have a great evening.
Thank
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item is September Treasurer's Report by Finance Director Mike Ducharme.
The September monthly report's in your packet, along with a little narrative related to where we are at this point in time. Next month, it'll be 6 months into the fiscal year. It's just flying by. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions, please? Now, Joe, you and Alderman Ludwigson and Mike, I think, met this evening to discuss the money issues. What was that all about?
That was about, we're coming back, the next workshop has been identified as the time for investment policy. But if you'd like, Mike can give you a little bit of information from tonight's meeting.
This evening, prior to the council meeting, we had a meeting with Alderman Ludwigson, Treasurer Tibbetts, myself, and Sherry Grafen from Lauterbach and Amen, related to the investment policy and a little plan for cash management that we've been kicking around to help us in managing the City of Prospect's funds on an ongoing basis. I believe all the questions at this time related to the investment policy have been answered, and we will be bringing it before the council at our next council meeting, I guess it would be. And at that time, hopefully present a cash management plan that the council will be able to vote on.
Good. I am in great favor of cash management. We should go down the line, Joe, and let everybody have their say. Who's next down there? Peter?
And we
Well,
still have an
we're
item.
going right down the line.
We still have another item, too. Dan Peterson had asked the number C, American Association of Code Enforcement, National Code Compliance Month, that you report on that. So
All right, I was-
then we can go to person by
Well, we'll have
person.
to go back to number 9 then. staff, elected officials, et cetera.
All right,
So let's go to Dan Peterson.
thank you very much. Real quickly, the American Association of Code Enforcement is a national organization that has been around since 1983. The state of Illinois is a proud member of that, and I'm a past president of the American Association of Code Enforcement as well. So the organization has declared October as National Code Compliance Month, and they have issued a proclamation that I'm not going to bore you with and read. But basically, our mission is to protect the quality of life through the enforcement of proper zoning, maintenance, and housing regulations to ensure positive quality of life for everyone in the community. And as a almost a 22-year member of the organization, I'm very proud to be a member, and very proud that the city of Prospect Heights is also a member of the organization, and this will be hung proudly in City Hall. Thank you.
All right, you want to go back to 9? And no, Peter, we're just going down the line. Alderman Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to revisit the discussion of staggered term elections as we get closer to these elections and people are out petitioning. We need to garnish, I believe it's 150 signatures in order to put it on that April ballot. So it wouldn't impact anybody that's running for this election cycle. However, moving forward, it eliminates that perfect storm of everybody from a council stepping down, stepping aside, whatever, and not having any historical data or knowledge remaining with the council. So I was hoping that anybody that is circulating a petition could also at the same time circulate a petition for the referendum, for the referendum question to put that staggered term election on the ballot.
Right now, Joe, we have it on a workshop session. Is that where we're going?
We don't yet, but that was
That was
a
the plan.
discussion, yes, sir.
But in the
For the
meantime,
next meeting.
well, but we don't have to turn in petitions till December 3rd. So when's our next workshop session? Date?
Let's see, I think it's, I believe November 12th. I don't have the calendar in front, November 12th or 13th? 12th?
Well, at any rate, we have a request to have anyone out getting petitions, which I have no problem with, also carry a petition clipboard, if you will. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, I just wanted to have a light discussion about it. You know, when we talked about it last time, there was no real movement on it because it required signatures and nobody had really committed to going out and getting those signatures. Now that, you're running and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you think it to be a good idea that there be a staggered cycle to it so that it's not just a wave of new people coming in. We can get the signatures, you put it on the ballot, you let the people decide if they believe it's a good idea as well. But, I believe it to be a good idea. And I was looking to see and get feedback from the rest of council and see how they feel about it as well.
All right, are we looking to do that now? It's not on the agenda. Or are we going to wait for the workshop?
I'd prefer to have the discussion now because if we wait till the workshop, everybody's already begun circulating their petitions, and by that time, middle of November, most of those petitions have already been fulfilled.
All right, comments, Mr. Rosenthal?
I like the idea of staggered terms for exactly the reason that you mentioned.
Sorry.
In terms of a complete turnover and a loss of history. My question is, do we need action from the city council to go forth with signers to sign such petitions?
Absolutely
or can
not.
we just do it?
No, I mean, you can do it as an individual. You wouldn't be doing it as a council member to speak, but you'd be doing it as an individual who believes in the cause, and you're just getting signatures on a petition.
Would you have to have specifics laid out at that point? Or
I
would we
think
just
that
be
you're- no,
asking the question of whether or not we should be considering staggered terms?
I think you're working off the premise, correct, Kevin?
Yeah, the actual referendum question is straightforward. It's, shall the city of Prospect Heights have staggered elections? Excuse me. So that would be the referendum question that would be posed to residents. The only additional detail would be structuring which wards would be on one cycle versus the other cycle. But that's not something that would be put on the ballot or would be put to residents.
So it's basically yes or no?
Correct. Shall the city have staggered?
So you know, a little bit of history. They used to have staggered term elections. When there was twice the number of aldermen, there was a staggered cycle. And every community that touches us also has that staggered cycle. So I think that we just never went and revisited it after we reduced the number of aldermen or council members in its entirety. And I think it's time that it be addressed. So that's the reason I'm bringing it up.
I would agree. As you may recall, when I sat on the other side of the dais after one of the elections, I don't remember which one now, and when we had comments from the citizens, I raised that question that we should be considering, and I'm for us doing something like that.
Matt, how do you feel about it?
I agree. For the same reasons, I would be very much in favor of having staggered elections. I don't know who is running again, who is not, but it could potentially put us in a situation just as you described, where we have an entirely new council. Even other elected officials could be all new. And I like that history, or at least somebody bringing in that history. So I'm very much in favor of that. Just for clarification to our city attorney, again, you said the petition could go out even before it's decided that it's going to be put on the ballot, is that correct?
So you actually have to, you circulate a petition to get it placed on the ballot.
To get it placed on the ballot.
Right. So it would be a petition to place this question on the next ballot.
Okay.
And then if that threshold was reached, it would be certified by the clerk, and then it would be on the ballot, and then it would be a up or down vote by the residents at the next election.
And another point of clarification, you said that we would be doing that as a citizen, as a resident.
Correct, just as with any sort of referendum or petition question, you can do it as a private citizen. The city can't take a position one way or the other, it can provide information.
Okay, and then that leads me to my next question. As we, if any of us are running for re-election, we're collecting signatures for ourselves to be placed on the ballot. Can we have that petition at the same time, or does that need to be completely separate?
It would be a separate petition, but if you're out asking people for signatures and you wanted to ask them for another signature for a different issue, that's your prerogative as a private
Well,
citizen.
that's what I wanted to see from basically a legal standpoint. That can be done at the same time, or do I need to be completely separate with those issues? Or if I just explain to them that this is a separate issue?
You would need to explain to them it's a separate issue, and I would recommend that you try to avoid mixing the two, to make it clear, one, that they're two separate issues, and two, that this isn't a city-sponsored initiative. It's a private initiative that you're undertaking because you believe in it.
That answers my question.
Kevin, in response to that, when he's petitioning to run for an elected position, he's petitioning as an individual, not as an incumbent, not as a city official already.
Correct.
I mean, there's no legal reason why he couldn't circulate both petitions, no different than Nick will walk around and not only collect signatures for mayor, but he'll collect signatures for somebody else that, that he's working with just the same.
Right.
So how is that issue any different?
No, my concern is that if you are collecting signatures for a referendum question, a political question, you just make it clear that, I think people understand that if you're collecting signatures to be placed on a ballot for an elected position, you're not there on behalf of the city, but with this referendum question, it's a little less clear. It's affecting the nature of the city. So you just make it clear that you're doing this individually, just as you are collecting signatures to be placed on a ballot for an aldermanic position.
I could understand what you're saying if this was I think you're being overprotective myself. I think that if this.
I am
was-
an attorney.
I get it, I get it. If this was the hot button topic, if this was water, if this was home rule, if this was any of those, hot button topics, I'd say, yeah, I agree with you. However, this is really staggered term elections. The rules for the staggered term election are clearly defined as you presented to us. It's not like we can change that one way or the other. You're gonna have a mayor, 2 aldermen, a treasurer, and a clerk on one election. You're gonna have 3 aldermen on another. You're not changing the system of government. All you're doing is overlapping terms. And, I'd love to hear somebody's response in opposition of it, because I don't understand what the opposition would be.
And I'm asking because I want to be very cautious myself. I don't want to be on the wrong side of things. But as long as each is explained appropriately to whoever is signing it, then I'm still on the right side.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Just as long as you make it clear that.
All right, Alderman Ludwigson.
I agree we need to do it, that we need to do it also. I know that you've looked into this already, Kevin, but I don't believe they went to petition for the reduction from 10 to 5. I think it was just a council action to put it on the ballot, similar to home rule and many others. Why is this one different?
So there are certain referenda questions like home rule that can be placed on a ballot by council action but via resolution, and home rule is an excellent example of that. The statute requires that petitions be circulated in order to get this placed on the ballot. So there's no provision in the statute, unlike for home rule, that allows council action to place it on the ballot.
Okay, I agree with it.
Your question, though, was there was no referendum question to reduce it from 10 to 5, correct?
No, I don't remember there being a signature requirement or a petition to put it on the ballot. This goes back to 2000 or 1998 or whenever it was. I just don't remember that being a petition question. I think the council just decided to do it then.
Okay, I wouldn't know either way, so.
I have a question. Just as a point of clarification, the statute would require the even-numbered wards, which I believe is 2 and 4, would have they would have a 2-year term, and it does affect the people who are running for election or re-election in the next election in April.
No.
I think it does, because it would affect particularly those 2 wards.
It wouldn't be approved until after the election.
But
So it would have zero impact.
my question as a point of clarification is, does it or does it not affect those people who are running? So if aldermen in wards 2 and 4, would they only be running for 2 years?
So the way, if the elections were, or if the referendum was approved at the next election, it would affect the next regularly scheduled election. It would not affect the elections that are occurring on the same election that the referendum is posed to the residents.
It would be 2023.
Okay.
And then the way the process works is half, and how the half is decided is still an issue that needs to be researched. But or as close to half as you can get of the aldermanic offices would be on one cycle, and that first half would be on a 2-year term to create a staggering effect. And then after that period of time, every term is 4 years, and every election is for a 4-year term. So if it's approved on the next election cycle, you would have an election for 2 wards that would have a 2-year term for that one election, and then every election after that would be 4 years.
And the statute does talk about even-numbered wards.
Yes, this is an illegal issue that we still have to explore, and we didn't do it because when this was brought up earlier in the year, we kind of got sidetracked. But for each form of municipal government, there's a similar statute that allows these staggered elections, and they all have variations on the language. For the city's form, it says the even-numbered wards and then the odd-numbered wards are grouped together. But for other forms of government, they have different variations. The requirement is that you come to as close to half of the offices are on one cycle and the other half are on the other. So
Right.
it's unclear if it has to be even number and odd number. I know there's been discussion about grouping wards that are close together that may have similar issues in the same cycle, even if they're odd and even numbered wards. So that's something we'd have to explore further.
All right, if we're done with that topic, we'll go back to where we were. Yes.
Just, and this is a focus, I'm focusing on consistency now. And I know you can't help or anything like that, but should the verbiage and how be standard on every single one of these petitions that people are going out to get signed? And if so, which I would think it would be, how would we make that happen? That's the first part of my question. And the second part of my question, of the various different forms that we have for petitions in the guide for elected officers, which one will we use?
So for your first question, it's easy to answer. The statute lays out the language.
Okay.
And when I drafted the memo many months ago, when this initially came up, it provides that language in the site.
Okay.
So you can refer to that. As to the form, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure Joe circulated a packet, an election packet that will probably have that answer, and I'd be happy to confirm which form is necessary.
Fine.
All right,
You're talking about the form for the
petition?
referendum question?
But
Isn't that's not really a candidate thing. That could just be a generic form with the information on it, correct?
I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
All right,
There's
how about now?
a variety of forms in that book.
Right, but those were all candidate-driven.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the referendum question.
I don't know. That's why I raised the question.
All right, well, you will get back to it.
I will.
Once you know.
Yes,
Right
I will.
right now, you
Thank you.
don't know, so let's move on.
Mayor, well, everybody else, how do you feel about it?
I'm ambivalent, because it's not going to affect this coming election, right?
No, not in the slightest.
So I'm not sure where I'll be after that. I can do it. I mean, I'm all right with it. Affect some of you, but it won't affect me. That's not to say I'm against it. I'm not. We'll do it. I think it's a good idea. This all at a time, out the door, in the door, isn't really that exciting. It doesn't change much. All right, Peter, you were next.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we waited all that time for no report. All right. Is Mark here?
Yes, sir.
Have you been hiding back there?
No, sir. No, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Real quick, Public Works world. Our crew's been busy the last couple weeks, rotting storm drains all over town. We've had a few issues that some residents have contacted us about, and some others that we've discovered on our own. Our street resurfacing program is well underway. Everyone's seen the barricades all over town and the different spots we're working. Most of the concrete work is completed, curbs and sidewalk replacements. Restore will come later on. Surface grinding is well underway. We've all seen that. And we're looking forward to new asphalt in the next couple weeks. The contractor's doing a good job keeping on schedule, moving forward. And a little FYI, Cook County came through today and did street sweeping of Camp McDonald Road from Rand Road all the way to River Road. So it was nice to get that done. We've asked earlier this year, and they did it finally, so nice job. And then, because we don't have our own street sweeper, so it's a nice service that we get from them on a county road.
Good.
So,
Go ahead, finish up.
that's it, sir.
Alvin Williamson wrote a memo about a hanging wire. What was that all about?
I'll take that, sir. There was a temporary cable wire that was placed out that was damaged in the storm. The company went out. Inspector Porzicki met with the family member, called them, and the company responded back to her. They're having a crew out there already, so it's taken care of.
All right, but that was hanging over the weekend, and I hope it wasn't a live wire.
No, it was a low volt, it was a cable wire, it wasn't the power wire.
All right, thank you. You're next.
Just a real quick update, if you lived over on the east side, the extensive demolition started last week on the River Trail condominiums. Minor and East with their contractors making good progress. Staff is continuing to meet with the architects. As a matter of fact, we have a walkthrough tomorrow of Building 13, now that that has been determined to be able to remain. It met the 50% rule with the DNR and FEMA, so it does not have to be torn down and meet new flood elevation requirements. So we're meeting tomorrow to talk how the new building that's being planned in Building 14 and Building 13 integrate, and all the code upgrades that will be required in Building 13. So great progress is being made there, and I expect within 30 days, we should have our first set of construction drawings to review for permits. And that's what we've been having.
Thank you. Clerk Wendy.
Yes, I just wanted to remind everybody that the city is going to be conducting 2 town hall meetings to discuss the home rule referendum. The first one is Wednesday, October 24th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m., which is going to be at City Hall at 8 North Elmhurst Road. And the second one is Tuesday, October 30th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. at Gary Morava Recreational Center at 110 West Camp McDonald Road. This is really an important, both town hall meetings are here to educate and help the residents to better understand the home rule issues, to understand the changes that can come with home rule, the arguments for and against home rule, power for local governments, and the many other issues that affect the city which are related to home rule. So I hope that all the residents will come to these town hall meetings. This is an opportunity to ask all the questions you wanted to ask and obtain information that you want and need to know to best be able to make the right decision and vote on November 6, 2018. So I hope everyone attends. Thank you.
Peter, excuse me, just one moment. Peter, that's in the newsletter, those dates, right?
Those dates, actually, yeah, we sent out a separate mailer to every home in Prospect Heights with that information. It is also in the upcoming newsletter, which hopefully will be delivered this week. So it's got both dates in there, and it's got a bunch of information about home rule to educate, kind of give people a sample of what they're going to learn, hopefully, through the home rule meetings themselves. So.
All right, the printer should be advised that sometimes we get information out to people about events that already happened, and that's not the way to do it, so. Let's see if we can get them to speed it up. What's the last comment you received from the printer? That it'll be out soon, or tomorrow, or next year?
The normal turnaround time is 2 weeks, and we're coming up right on 2 weeks, sir. We spoke earlier in my office. I reached out to them. They have not gotten back to me yet. I left a message for them, so they may have called, but I was not in my office after 5 o'clock, so.
All right, thank you. Joe, you got something?
No reports tonight, thank you.
Moving on. Karen, you're back from your
From New
world
York.
trip again.
Oh, just New York. Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to let everybody know that the county has reached out to us, that they have specimen ballots for the referenda questions for Northfield and Wheeling Townships. Those will be published in local newspapers and the Chicago Tribune sometime the end of this week. And we also have them posted on the bulletin board outside if people want to see what they look like.
Okay. Alderman Rosenthal.
No report at this time.
Alderman Dolan.
No report, thank you.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Yes, 2 things. First, I received a call from a resident in the 4th Ward about the use of the township bus. She had called me with concern that she was told something about Prospect Heights people can't really use the bus. I said that can't be true. So I called the township and figured out what it was about. So she, just as a note to people who use that or want to use it, there's a senior bus that the township does. It'll take you to your doctor's appointments or to the grocery store if you can't drive. It's a great thing. The only problem is they require a very long notification process to use it. So it takes about at least 2 weeks to get on the list. So you kind of have to know what you're doing well in advance to get on the bus list. But that was resolved, and she's good now. So I thought there was a concern that maybe we weren't part of some program, but as long as you live in the township, you're eligible for that program. The second thing is, do we know about absentee ballots? Is that something people can come here for, or is it only Arlington Heights and other?
We had, if they wanted to mail in, I'll have to see if they can get any other absentee ballots at this point.
So that date's passed then?
Well, for the mail-in we had, that's already passed, but
Okay.
they can still go to the county, and they're still, if they want to call me, I'll get them to the right people to talk
Is it
to.
only the county, or is there closer local?
That I don't know, because I only deal with I
Okay.
usually deal with the county when they call,
Okay.
so.
All right, thank you.
I was just going to add, in a mailing that I got, it said that you can go to a location in Wheeling
Oh, okay.
and do it.
Maybe the
Used to be at the township.
Probably the township.
Township.
Right, township.
Are we talking about voting?
For early voting.
Early
You
voting.
can go right to Wheeling Township
Township, right.
Township, yeah.
on Route
It's First
Route
Street or-
Arlington Heights Road, just south of Palatine.
Okay,
That's where I go.
Yeah, but I just wanted to mention that I did get a mailing on that they
Okay.
can go there. So
Thank you.
that's the closest place they go.
All right, Deputy Chief Zalaki.
Everything's going great at the station. Officers are doing a great job out there, keeping it safe. This Saturday, the 27th, we're in the middle of our hiring process. We have our police orientation and written test exam at, starting at 9 a.m. with the orientation and the written exam at noon. And presently, we have 70 applicants that have filled out applications. We'll be going through the testing process. We have 2 immediate openings, and I have 2 slots reserved at the State Police Academy in January. So it's going to go rather quickly once we get the written done, the orals and backgrounds, and we'll have 2 newer officers soon to be hired in January. That's it.
All right, thank you. Treasurer Tibbetts, please.
Just a reminder, of course, as Wendy pointed out, the town hall meetings here in Prospect Heights, the 24th and the 30th of this month. I also wanted to mention that I've been made aware that sometimes people are losing signs out in the neighborhood, the for signs and against the home rule signs that you may have noticed popping up. It's just not a good idea to steal people's signs, whether you're for or against home rule. Let people put the signs out that they prefer, and wait until after the election for them to take them down. That's just one of those things that's just not neighborly to do. So appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe?
Next item of business is old business. This is second reading of the ordinance raising the operating reserve of the general fund. And we've also adjusted the formula. Second reading of this ordinance. Any?
Make a motion, we approve.
Second, please.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 12, new business. We have item 12A is a resolution establishing the position of the city of Prospect Heights on the use of home rule. I'll refer this to Attorney Carney, who he and his partner drafted this resolution to explain it and the purpose and intent.
Thank you, Joe. This resolution is a fairly straightforward resolution that imposes essentially what are PTEL property tax limitation requirements upon the city should it become home rule. As you all are undoubtedly aware, the city as a non-home rule municipality is subject to PTEL, which limits the ability of the city to raise property taxes absent a referendum. This resolution commits the city to adhering to those referendum requirements, even if it becomes home rule. The only other exception is for emergencies, emergency situations where going to referendum would be too burdensome or just too far in the future. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this resolution.
Anyone, please?
Yes. Could you speak a little bit more about this situation of emergency situations? Is it definable, or what will we really be talking about then?
So emergency, it can take a variety of forms. You could have a natural disaster, that's a common emergency. You could have a funding shortfall from the state. You could have a whole variety of events that occur. The reason that you may not necessarily want to include a definition of emergency is just because natures of emergency, sometimes they're unforeseeable, and you wouldn't want to box a future council in by creating a definition of an emergency, and then something comes up that is a true emergency but isn't included in the definition and therefore would be outside of that authority. So therefore, we don't include a definition of what an emergency is in the resolution.
My second question is then, given that provision in there, does it in any way dilute the intent of the resolution, that of obligating the city to have a referendum on a potential property tax increase under the home rule provisions?
I don't believe it does. We drafted it in a way that it's a commitment by the city to, absent an extraordinary circumstance in the form of an emergency, to continue doing what it's done as a non-home rule municipality. And if it seeks to increase property taxes, it would have to go to an advisory referendum from the community.
So the intent is still there, it's not weakened in any way?
Correct.
Okay.
It is a voluntary choice by the city to adhere to stricter controls imposed on non-home rule municipalities, even if it becomes home rule.
All right, anyone else? Alderman Ludwigson?
Nope, I'm good with it.
Alderman Doldick?
No, sir, thank you.
Alderman Williamson?
I'm good with it.
All right, what are we looking for?
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? If not, take a roll.
Alderman Williamson?
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal?
Aye.
Alderman Ludwigson?
Aye.
Alderman Dolick?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Joe?
Next item is B, request for first read waiver. This is the ordinance follows a plan commission recommendation approving a special use permit for the automobile storage facility at 1326 North Rand Road. It's also known as Village Cycle in the city's B3 Commercial, Wholesale, and General Services District. Director Peterson attended the Plan Commission Zoning Board, and he can offer any information or questions.
Thank you very much. The owner, Mr. Eberhard of Village Cycle Sport, is here tonight, should you have any direct questions of him. This is a situation where the owner has had some previous parking, and working with the city came forward with an action to apply for a permitted special use in the B3 zoning district for vehicle storage on his property. In evaluating the application, the owner of the property has surplus parking in excess of what to support his retail business, approximately 6,800 square feet of excess parking in the western end of his parking lot. The applicant has proposed to utilize that space for rental vehicle parking. At the public hearing, there was testimony given, and some conditions were discussed. First of all, it would be restricted to the west 6,800 square feet. There would be no semi-trailer truck or trailer parking. Storage of construction material and equipment are not allowed. However, construction trucks and trailers are, but the storage of actual materials would not. There would be it would be hard to enforce, but they discussed limiting the idling of vehicles. So based on the discussion, it put basically 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Of limitation on idling of vehicles in that rear yard. The wooden fence along the west property line would be repaired and made in a sound condition. And the owner shall provide contact information for all vehicles stored on the property if need be. With that, the Plan Commission voted unanimously to support a special use permit for the applicant at 1326 North Rand Road.
I'd like to ask you if I could, we have a new truck ordinance coming in, right? It begins the end of the year, Joe, is that when the?
It's already started.
Oh,
sir.
it was approved, adopted.
Okay,
Commercial truck parking in residential zones.
right.
That wouldn't apply to
How,
this.
Dan, how do you compare that ordinance compared to what you're allowing or suggesting we allow with these kind of vehicles?
Two things. Number one, this is not in a residential district, so the new truck parking ordinance would not apply. Secondly, there are residents that may have vehicles that don't comply with our ordinance that need a place to park. This may provide for them an opportunity to have a spot locally that they could keep their vehicles stored at if they're not allowed to be kept in their residential vehicle or residential lots. So that's how I see it.
Questions, anyone, please?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I'm not too familiar with the area, except with Rand Road itself. What's the property behind it or that's adjacent to it? Is it residential?
The property to the north is actually in Arlington Heights, and that's the car dealership, which I believe now is a Subaru dealership. The property to the south is actually a vacant lot, which the owner, Mr. Eberhart, has under contract with, and we have an application for a new use coming forward next month. And then the property to the west is residential. That neighbor did attend the meeting, voiced no oppositions other than once in a great while, one of the vehicles will idle later at night, either warming up or when they're dropping off. And so we talked about idling at the meeting.
Is that the only residence that borders it?
Yes.
What is to the west?
Dollar?
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Dan, a couple of questions. What is directly to the west behind Village Cycle?
The property directly to the west is a residential. It's separated by a 7-foot wooden fence that's there that is in fairly good condition, needs some repair, which the owner said he'd do, and a tree line that's about 30 feet thick at this point in time, which is part on Mr. Eberhardt's property and part on the residential property.
Thank you. My other question is, you may have touched on it, but in listening to the zoning board meeting, do you have specific language in terms of vehicles that are stored there? Do they have to be operational? Are they in good condition or running in condition? Or is it possible to store a vehicle that may look okay, but it's not running? My point is, could it be used as storage for a vehicle that's in need of repair, but they're waiting to see what they can do with it? Is that spelled out?
It did not get brought up specifically to this case. However, the city, under the property maintenance code, has a very specific and strict language about inoperable vehicles, which we actually made more restrictive at our last code hearings when we adopted the 2012 property maintenance code. So it is addressed in our existing codes.
Okay. But does it get?
Alderman Ludwigson?
Yeah, it's a couple things. This falls in our business district, and this goes to what Alderman Williamson was talking about with the institutional memory of the aldermen that are here and new people that come in. I don't think we've talked enough about what that is, this business district that we spent a lot of time with creating when we had the Dominick store close and intentionally not lease out because it was in their favor to prevent competition, which cost the city millions and millions of dollars in sales tax revenue over the period of time that they were closed. It was disheartening because it was done, because it was a business decision which was best for Dominick's and not what was best for the city of Prospect Heights. So when that happened, we were very upset and decided to create a business district there because it really is one of our few acreage-wise, largest areas of business that has commercial property along it. So the thought was, and we saw that when the storage company came in, that really wasn't a use that was good for the business district, but we created an agreement between us and them that then made it beneficial to us. I don't see there's no benefit to the city allowing parking here. To me, I think that once you let one, everybody's gonna ask for it, and there's no benefit for us to have that on probably one of our most busiest roads that pass through town. Originally, when the owner of Village Cycle came in, he was concerned because he had too much property with the building and the taxes were bad, which I can't imagine how much they are. They're probably enormous on that property, and you were interested in selling off a portion of it, and you would ask to park cars there, and I said, well, we'll do whatever you're trying to do with your property as far as zoning to try and allow somebody to come in and operate a business there in a business district, but parking has always been one of those things that's been touchy as far as off-street parking. I'm not in favor of this because there really is no benefit. Not that everything has to be beneficial to the city that comes in, but this is on the opposite side of beneficial. You're just filling up 6,800 square feet parked cars that come in and out. I know that we can set rules up that say, hey, you can't have cars that are inoperable, you can't have semis there. I was there last weekend and somebody had the car up on blocks and we're changing tires in the back. So I mean, that kind of stuff is gonna happen, okay? So whatever we put in. Sure. I took a picture. I didn't think to put it in up on the screen.
I'm Joe Eberhardt from Village Cycle Sport, and you talked about the business district. Well, my main business is a bicycle shop, and I'm just trying to keep the business open. And I think that is a big asset for your business district there.
The cycle store?
Yes.
I agree, but.
And I'm a seasonal business with high taxes, and you have to be creative these days just to stay open in retail. That's the fact.
Right. No, it's just that use is not, it's just not, I believe me, I fully understand you probably get a good buck from the people parking there.
Well, it's not that much, but it's enough to, it helps.
Mm-hmm. And like you and I had talked, if you wanted to put an addition on your building and get more square footage to rent, that's what that's all about.
Well, retail businesses are closing every day now. You can just drive down the street and see that.
Right. But
so I'm not going to be putting an addition on for the bicycle shop. I'm trying to keep the shop open.
Right, but you're kind of making my point. The next step after that happens, when people aren't renting buildings, is people are wanting to park cars and fill these lots up, and I don't want to see.
Well, like someone said, there is a need for that. Some people can't park their boat or recreational vehicle in their driveway. It's not allowed. They do need a place to put it.
There are a lot of needs in the city that we're not necessarily going to just say you can go ahead with, and that's one of them. So I'm not in favor of it. I understand fully why you're doing it. I get it. But it's just that's a very important area to the city as far as development goes and keeping there used to be problems, you're probably familiar up Rand Road, the problems they had with bookstores and all different things when the area kind of degraded a little bit, and as that property starts to degrade and you allow things to come in, it just tends to get worse, and to me that's going in a direction that's not.
The lot is also 350 feet deep, and we're talking about the back 60 feet of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is invisible from the road, and I have the side lot under contract, with another business going in there that hopefully gets approved.
Alderman, if I could ask you, is your concern about not receiving income for what's happening back there?
No, my concern is a direction more. I understand what he's saying. It's hard to do something with the property. He doesn't want to put an addition on and do what we're looking to do with the business district. I hate to go to the next lowest use of the property and say, now we're going to park trucks. Next, it's going to be something else. And we already park cars, can't we park trucks? So it's just going to keep going. And frankly, everybody who's on that corridor would love to be able to rent out some of their parking spaces to somebody to park cars. It would just keep going, and I think it's important that we kind of, and we said this before when you and I had talked, and we were trying to enforce the requirement that the provision that said you couldn't do what you were trying to do already, that we would work with you in any way we could on zoning to expand the building, to sell off the piece like you're doing, but this route to me is just not beneficial.
Well, the location where it's at is right next to a car dealer that parks a couple hundred cars on the lot, so
Not for
it's
long.
not like this would.
I mean, that
stand
property,
out.
they're moving up, that up Rand Road.
Yeah, but there may be another car dealer going in there.
Have you talked to them? I'd like to see you work with them to maybe do something between the properties.
For me to go out of business and sell them my property?
You buy theirs if you want to do something.
A bicycle store cannot support, it's hard enough where I'm at.
All right, but for anything bigger to go there, you'd have to have contiguous lots, and there's, you have two of them, he's got a big one, there's one next to that. I think that's more the direction I'd rather see us go than,
You'd rather see someone buy my property, is what you're saying?
I'd rather see, if you're asking me what I want to see development-wise there, it's not allowing parking in every square foot of property that's there. Believe me, I understand your plight, and you said it's not that much anyway, but to me, it's a big deal to us as far as what it does to that district.
And I don't believe there's been any complaints, about anything going on back there that I know of, or the police department. I don't know if you've heard any.
You were going to tell us about the car. You said there was a...
Oh, that was an employee working on their car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up the life storage thing, and what we worked out there was 1.5% tax on everything they took in, income. It didn't specify where the income came from, but we got paid based on their gross income. If income is the issue, that's different than what you're bringing up, because we could charge, I don't know, $500 for parking stickers.
Well, every car would have to have a sticker there
Right.
anyway, regardless. I
Right.
understand what you're
we
saying,
could
but...
up the price to a point where we would have income. I mean, the semi-trailer trucks, I believe, someone help me, they're paying $250 per sticker. That's the last I remember.
Really?
We could generate maybe through that way. But you're more concerned about the idea of trucks and boats. Are you thinking about boats also?
Yeah, we did
All
discuss
right,
like
so-
a boat or a recreational vehicle, but not a semi-trailer.
Right, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
So that's a little different, but I just thought if we're trying to generate income, let's try to figure out how to generate income.
I think it's just more of a direction of the type of income. I just don't think that we need, once, that's the easy out to start to, I'm sure if every parking spot that's not used along Rand Road, anywhere in the city, if we told people you can rent that out on a monthly basis, who wouldn't do it? Tony's would be a full parking lot of rented spots. It's just not a good direction to go.
Well, you got Route 12 rental there, that isn't the most pleasant-looking place in a business zone. They park stuff all over the place, and
Right.
I'm not sure they do a good job cleaning up either.
But they're also leasing all those vehicles, and every time they lease it, they're
So
paying.
you're back to income now. That's
Right,
what you're
that's a
all about.
business use. I don't have a problem if somebody's got a business use. And if you wanted to bring an Avis car rental in there, and they were gonna lease cars before the
Well,
Ford
then that's-
dealership.
For the income, then,
I
is
would-
what you're saying.
But it's a
Because
different
parking an
kind.
Avis car or a car dealership or
No,
a vehicle.
now you're trying to say any car, it's all the same. I'm saying it's not the same because you're talking about boats, you're talking about inoperable cars could be parked there, different things could be parked there. It's not the same as an Avis car rental. That you have traffic, people coming in and out, renting cars, and if we can't agree on that that's different than just an all-out parking lot for storage of cars, we're not gonna agree that you're gonna understand my position. It's very different to have an Avis car lot versus a
Well,
cold
and those,
storage
they do
parking.
park right on the street, very visible from everybody going by. Like I said, I'm talking about the back 60 feet of a 350-foot lot.
I understand.
Well shielded is what you're saying.
Yes.
It's fenced, it's shielded. That's a requirement we have for residential truck parking, to hide it. Well, you're hiding it already, aren't you?
Yeah, and when the other business hopefully goes in, that would be shielded even more.
Yeah. Questions, please, Alderman Williamson?
Director Peterson, does the special use, does it transfer to new ownership?
No, this, the way this ordinance is written is it will run with the use and user, not with the land. So should Mr. Eberhard move or change or sell, you would have to come back, they would have to come back and reaffirm, was the intent. And that's how it's written in the ordinance.
Because I personally, you know, I feel for it, I understand the retail struggles. I personally think that it sets a bad precedent, because the moment that you get it, the trucks that we had to kick out of Nico's parking lot, Nico's is gonna say, well, wait a minute, Village Cycle has it across the street. The people who were parking over at Prospect Crossings are gonna say the same thing. Well, wait a minute, they're parking over across the street. And, you know, it all sounds great on paper until all of a sudden it becomes the truck parking that is off of Palatine Road. And in our main business district corridor, it's truck trailers and it's, you know, large buses. I mean, I've seen any number of things. And as you say that there's been no complaints, Joe, there has been complaints. Okay, they've complained to me, they've complained to Pat, I don't know who else they've complained to.
Residents have complained?
Yes.
Or businesses?
No, the residents.
Residents?
Driving by, seeing it, what's all that going on over there?
Well,
So, there have been.
Were they
there have been-
curious, or was that a complaint? Did they say, I don't like the way it looks? Or?
Both, both.
Okay.
I mean, nothing formal, no lodged complaints, it's
Okay.
questions and.
Sure.
Is there any
So
way?
it's not a use that anybody wants to see.
The one thing that does need to be, I don't know if everybody knows it, Mr. Eberhardt's the only B3 lot in our whole Rand Road business corridor. The B3 is the only zoning lot that allows vehicle parking as a special use. I just throw that out there because that's what the ordinance says. The other sites cited would be against zoning to do that, and that's why they were put on notices previously.
Is it a text amendment?
No, it's already an established permitted special use in the B3. And that's why he was able here to come, and he didn't have to ask for a text amendment to apply for a special use.
Alderman Dolick?
I stated my concerns. One issue that I disagree with is it is very visible from Rand Road. You mentioned that it's not. I see that each time I pass through there. One other issue that I ran into, this was back in August. I was riding with one of our officers through the night, and early into the morning, there were employees there setting up for a sale the following morning. And one of the employees mentioned that to the officer that there was a tow truck that was back there that had broken down. They weren't sure what they were going to do with it, but it was just there for the time being, just to inform the officer. That's my concern, is it could be a situation where we don't know what to do with it. It's not going to be permanent, but we'll put it back there. It does, I agree, set a bad precedent for just the visual aspect of it from Rand Road. I don't want to see that happen, and so that's my concern.
Alderman Rosenthal?
I would agree with what is said, and I think what this discussion leads to, and at least in my thing, is that we have to really take a look at this business district activity and come back with some definition in a non-emergency situation. I mean, deliberating on it and defining what can be there and what can't be there. You know, it's just more parking again, and it never looks right, at least in my experience.
Could we possibly, Dan, maybe you could work in on this too, give him a one-year moratorium so that he has time to locate someone else other than what's in there now, if everything is met that was talked about at your council meeting with the Building and Zoning Group. Is that something that can be worked out? I don't think we want to chase anybody out of our city. We're trying to attract them.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the reason why this came up is because that was what was going on. There was a moratorium. It was noticed this is not something that just came up. This has been going on for 2 years or a year and a half. And right when the city decided to start to really tell you, you can't do this, then the petition was filed for the special use. And then we've gone through that whole process. So this is not new, nor am I suggesting that he has to throw his people out next week. I do believe that you could have a period of time where you let them know and they can go, you know, to a different location. So this is not about trying to do something tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Would you be in favor of a 1 year? I mean, you're not going to find someone that's going to move in next week. We know that, someone different.
I believe that they should have a few months or a couple months to try and to relocate them, but the idea to say a year, we did that once, it became another year, then it became, now I'm going to apply for this special use, it just went on and on and on.
Well, he's not, but, excuse me, he's not looking for a 3-month break. He's looking to find another resident, tenant, construction, or something like that. That's not going to happen in 2 months. If we gave, I don't remember that we gave him a written moratorium. Maybe we did, because I did talk to Dan about that some more than a year ago, you're right. But why not try to help him, and he can collect his income 6 months, how about 6 months? So he's got some time to market what he's got back there that may be available.
Can you commit here on the public airwaves that 6 months would be it? Or is it
If
something
that's what
that,
you tell me, that's what I'm gonna have to do, so I'm.
are you trying to find somebody else? Is that, he's trying to give you the opportunity to.
Well, no, we discussed this before, and I did find a buyer for that half of the property. So I am trying to, do things to, get businesses in there and, alleviate some of my tax burden and stay in business.
And when we had
That's
talked,
my-
that was the main thing about doing something with the other half. You didn't think that you could. And, then you worked with Dan and you were able to. I
Right.
thought it was over then. When I heard that you were in the process of selling that, I thought it was over until this came up, that you wanted to apply for this permit, so.
Joe, but honestly said, have you been aggressive about trying to move these people out and call it a better tenant, a good tenant?
Well, what
in?
type of tenant? I would have to put up a building, right, to get a tenant in there? Or what would be permissible as a tenant on that back property?
Well, permissible is easy. We've got the building and zoning person right here. I don't mean to say that he's going to give it to you now.
I mean, if not vehicles, I don't know what else I could put on a big parking lot.
You may have to build something, yes, that could be true. But you got to be aggressive. You got to
It is a
advertise, you
parking
got to
lot.
put a sign up there, you got to do things, and I haven't really seen that.
Well, I did put up a sign in the lot. I hired a realtor, or I signed with the realtor that did get a buyer for that half of that lot.
And what you sold was parking lot. I mean, I get it, it's parking lot, that's what you sold.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can get a back lot tenant that wants to build something. I know that the guy there's a person in town who does auto mechanic work that doesn't have enough space, and he's right around the corner from you. Could
So
that,
you'd rather have an auto vehicle place, kind of like the body shop, next door?
he doesn't do
Vehicles
body work,
going in.
but he.
But I mean, it
does
would
other-
be permissible, right?
Correct.
To have a body shop.
Correct.
Right, but why
And
don't we?
There's a lot of permissible properties that would not be as neat and orderly as this, but I guess that's the way it's written.
All right, I asked the whole council, would like to have everyone agree. We don't often have everyone agree, but I'd like to have this agreement about taking 6 months, aggressively market the property, safeguard under the rules and regulations that are in effect now for what you have there, shield it, no idling, no, car, truck, that tow truck, whatever that was, should have been out of there as quickly as possible. Maybe it was, I don't know. But would the council members want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, Mayor, we have a request for waiver of first reading. It might be advisable to withdraw that request.
Okay.
And that would give the council and the applicant time to think about all the options that have been discussed. And then, because, just for the applicant, if it fails, if the vote fails, you can't come back for another year. And I think that would hamstring you if, moving forward. So I think perhaps we just withdraw the request for waiver, and you would come back to the next council meeting, would still be on the agenda for the next council meeting. He can decide, he can consider the options that have been discussed, the council can consider the options that have been discussed, and he can make a decision on how he wants to proceed with his application, so he's not, he isn't banned from pursuing this on a failure of vote.
All right, are you suggesting this gets pulled off?
Well, no, it's on the agenda.
And let him come back for a 5-month moratorium?
Well, he can certainly, he can withdraw his application.
Right, so that he's got an opportunity to come back.
Correct, but I think if withdrawing the request for waiver tonight to allow you time to process this would be advisable. It would still be on the agenda for the next meeting, and you can make a decision of how you'd like to proceed before that next meeting. Otherwise, you may be more hamstrung in terms of.
Kevin, is it the special use that he's then restricted from even asking any special use for the next year?
For this type of special use.
So it really only applies to the car storage anyway.
And
He
yeah,
could come
and-
back if you wanted to have a special use for, I can't think of what would require a special use to build an addition and have a business there, but if he was to have a restaurant, I'm just saying this because I know it requires a special use, a drive-through McDonald's. I mean, that requires a special use. He wouldn't be restricted from asking for that special use.
No, it's only for asking for the same relief that you were unsuccessful in asking for. But again, if we do the waiver and then vote, and it fails tonight, that ends this line of inquiry for a year, essentially, and I don't know if that's
So
advisable.
what I'm hearing is if Joe requests a removal of what's on the agenda.
Of the waiver, yep. So it would be, it's first reading, we're at a first reading. You would have a second reading at the next meeting, which is the normal process anyways. And in the interim, you can
Try to work something out.
work something out, and then if you decide you want to revisit this, you can withdraw your application, or you can proceed, depending on how you feel.
Does
Just
anyone
gives you
have a
more time.
problem with that process?
I think that sounds like a good idea to me.
I would agree.
All right, let's do that. But 2 weeks, which is the next meeting, 2.5 weeks, doesn't give you a lot of time. It gives you time to think
Right.
and to talk and maybe ask for something different.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Joe?
All right, so I take it B is continued?
Let's withdraw.
Withdrawn or B?
Well, with B, we had the first reading, so we just didn't have, we're not waiving it.
So the first reading is still in effect.
Yep, that was our first reading.
Okay,
We didn't have a vote on it first.
You don't vote on it.
You don't have votes on
I
first.
know, but we had a straw poll. It's pretty tough in itself.
Well, so for first reading, it would just be a reading of the ordinance and discussion. There would be no vote. They would have had to vote to waive first reading and then go to second reading.
Okay.
So we had
All right.
a first.
We're good. Move on. please.
Okay.
So Joe, do you want me to, we pushed the waste contract? So I did not see an exception. So if you can't go into executive session.
Although I would call this a utility.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Okay.
So I know Peter identified the potential vendors by A, B, and C, so if, retain some anonymity.
We're back at the board.
If you have concerns about discussions of something, just bear in mind that we can't do it in executive session.
All right, so we're still waiting for the end. There's more
Yeah.
things here.
Right, because we skipped over this.
Back there, right.
And said and they wanted to possibly go to executive session, but we can't.
All right, so that's settled.
So it's those bullet questions then on the last page, the second to last page of items to be discussed. Is that what you were talking about, Joe?
Yes, I think in this, I'll turn it over to Peter, or maybe first of all, Peter, give a little bit of report where we stand as far as both the residential and the commercial responses.
Thank you, Joe. As you all should either have in your hand or have received earlier, I believe on Joe's Friday email out to everybody, his weekly notice. The confidential memo in front of you, and the reason why it is confidential, and Joe alluded to this, And the reason why we do have it as vendor 1, 2, and 3 instead of the individuals, even though they're named in the memo, is to respect the integrity, like Joe said, of the RFP process. All the 3 vendors that were chosen for the final go-around, or made it to the final round, you should say, actually have all the same information, so no one's gotten any additional information than the other vendors. As we know, one of the vendors is our current provider. We've been with that provider for 12 years, and Joe and I noticed that when we first came on board, myself 3 years ago, Joe a little longer than that, the city hadn't gone to a competitive process for solid waste collection for the 12 years. So our contract with the current vendor is up end of June 2019. So after direction of council, we decided to go through the RFP process. We did start the RFP process back in August. This went out beginning of August. The 5 vendors that we got proposals from gave us their submissions by the close of the RFP process, which was September 21st. And the city actually has until November 14th to make a decision. Joe mentioned November 12th is the next meeting, and we were hopeful that we would have a recommendation and a decision by the board on what to go forward with. As Alderman Ludvigson alluded to, the second to last page of the memo that was sent out does pretty much spell out what staff is looking from the elected officials. There's a bunch of categories that could affect the price, and one thing we want to make sure is that when we give a recommendation to the council, and the information that we're providing to the council, it's information the council finds valuable. So what we would like the council to do, and I know it's kind of hard to do now in an open session, keeping the confidentiality of the 3 proposals, but we'd like you to go through and let us know, as representatives for the residents of Prospect Heights and our businesses, because this is not only a residential proposal, but it's also commercial, to weigh the factors that we have in the second to last page. Things as, is it more valuable to have single-day pickup or multi-day pickup? The day of collection. Currently, right now, we have 1 day of collection. It's on a Friday. Is that something of value? Is it more beneficial? Would you mind shifting to multiple days? We also Joe and I wrote the RFPs in 2 separate parts, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 is residential, Part 2 is commercial. And we did it that way because we wanted the flexibility from the city's point of view, so that if one vendor came in with a great residential rate, but they didn't have a great commercial rate, and another vendor had a great commercial rate, but not so great of a residential rate, we could mix and match. We could have one vendor for residential, one vendor for commercial. And that was specified in the RFP process and reiterated to the 3 finalists. We also have, looking at the service that we have, unlimited yard waste collection. I know that's very popular. We also wanted to give an option to the city, to the elected officials, if that was something that they wanted to change as far as to go to a yard waste sticker program. And then we also want the elected officials to look at the city of Prospect, or our RFP process, we made proposals or guidelines for the vendors to respond to. Some of those vendors actually came back with counter proposals. So one of those is actually the annual price rating index, or increases, because as you know, and what we've had for the last 12 years, which is the reason kind of why we wanted to go to an RFP process, is we were looking at our rates compared to other municipalities, what they pay for garbage, and we thought it was a little high. And that tends to happen when you do have a long period without a competitive process, where the rates can get, artificially increased because of the year after year increases. So that's something that I'd like you to look at as well, as well as the individual rates for both the single family, the townhouse, and then the multifamily, and then the individual commercial rates as well. So what we're kind of looking at, or looking for, is the direction from the council in what's most important to you as representatives of the residents and the commercial businesses, and what you think would be most beneficial to them. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them at this time.
Peter?
Yes, sir.
Can you provide a definition, or do you provide a definition of single-family, townhome, and multifamily?
Well, for your purposes, the townhomes would be the Rob Roy subdivision. Single-family is any single-family home. And then the multifamily, of course, are the multifamily on the, like the east side of the city.
So Rob Roy would be a townhome already?
Rob Roy is townhome, correct.
Is that what it is now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And also, just for more information, through the process, we did ask the individual vendors in their proposals to provide us with the collection costs that included them actually getting rid of the residential recycling. We did have one of the vendors, one of the finalists, that asked that they would rather use the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County that we're part of to use their facility to get rid of residential recycling, which is at a greatly reduced cost, actually, to these vendors. So we actually had to go back to the other two finalists to get their revised rates. So now every single, or any vendor that we get going forward for the next 7 years is going to actually be utilizing the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County's recycling program. So that actually brought the rates down as well.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Yes. Peter, you just said 7 years. That was something I don't remember seeing. What's the duration of this? Or what would be the timeline of the contract?
July 1st of 2019, the new contract would start. It is a 7-year contract. Joe was correct in saying the reason behind that was we hoped that would give the vendors the best chance to give us their best rate, because it is a long-term commitment. We've been with our current vendor for 12 years, so 7 years is not that drastic. The contract also, or the RFP with the contract also states that there would be 3 re-ups, 1 year apiece. So in essence, as long as there weren't any service issues, it really would be up to a 10-year contract.
Would it be beneficial for you to explain SWANK, what that means, and what these guys are actually providing? I mean, everybody understands they're not providing garbage removal, they're just removing the garbage. Disposal is a separate issue.
Correct. This is a collection request for proposal. So any of the vendors would actually take their, collect the garbage from the residential areas and deliver it to SWANK. SWANK is, in essence, the disposal part of our solid waste. Now, for commercial, it's different. Commercial does not go to the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County. That would go to where the vendor chooses to go, along with the recycling. But residential recycling, residential garbage, solid waste, that would all go to the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County. And there is, so the council's aware, there is a fee for that disposal with SWANK that is not factored into this sheet. That's something that the city negotiates with SWANK, and that adds on. So the rates that you're looking at here in this RFP are strictly for collection. So you can see what, I think our current rate for single family, including the SWANK fee, is $27.77. So you can see what our current rates are, so you can subtract it, you know what our SWANK fees are for the residential, single-family residential, townhome, and multifamily. And the council should be aware that, like I said, that is negotiated with SWANK, so we as a city have some wiggle room and some control over that, of what's being charged to our residents for that disposal charge.
Be done?
I would address the questions that he had, if that's what you're looking for now, to kind of go over what we think of these bullet points. I mean, I'll tell you that single day, multiple day collection, I wasn't quite sure if you were saying that you could have recycling and yard waste on one day and garbage on another, or are you saying Rob Roy might be Wednesday and the single family Thursday and multifamily Friday?
Correct. A multiple days collection schedule would be that the city would be segregated into segments. One segment would be on Thursday, one on Friday, one on Saturday, or something
Would
similar.
they be by those categories you have in there, multifamily, townhouse, and single family?
The proposal, the one proposal for the multi-day pretty much separated it, single-family townhome and the multifamily. That's pretty much how they, to paint with a broad brush. I mean, there's some single-family mixed in with the townhome, but again, it was the city partitioned off into segments that was most efficient for them with their collection.
I guess I'll keep going.
Well,
Day of collection, I think right now we have Friday.
Correct. For residential.
For residential. So, I'm not sure that this day is important. Friday seems to be good. I don't know why. To me, it just seems like Friday's the best day. If you could pick a day to have garbage, it's personal. I didn't do any kind of study with the residents to see, but it just seems like a good day. So you're not having your garbage sit in your garage over the weekend. It's all gone by Friday. I know that was one of the thought processes, how we came up with Friday last time. One vendor for both residential and commercial, or split it. I would think that's more up to the vendors if they wanted to do that, because the commercial portion of our contract is very, very small compared to the residential pickup. So if they were willing to split it, I would have no problem with that. As long as whoever does it commercially does it all in one day, and the other days would be residential. Unlimited landscape, I think that's something a lot of people like. They can put out as much as they want, and it's unlimited garbage too. It's not just landscape. There's really no limit to what you can put out there. I think that's good. Not a fan of the stickers and the bags. The annual price rate increases, I wasn't quite sure. You had listed, each one had a different number, different way of figuring that. Were you suggesting that we go with one of the published CPI rates, or some rate that we use for other things now, that they could only go up that amount?
Proposed in the RFP was the CPI for Chicago, Kenosha, and whatever other city it is. But it is, what we presented, or what we proposed, was a 1.5 floor to a 3.5 ceiling. Two of the vendors did come back with counter proposals. That is, you can see on, not only in the memo, but also on the attachment, the chart on there. And what I also did, so that the elected officials could kind of project out 7 years down the line, what the rate is now compared to what the rate would be 7 years from now for each individual vendor at their lowest possible increase. Now, I will tell you, speaking with someone, David at Swank, who is a wealth of information and knows way more about garbage disposal than I ever will, mentioned that we probably will never hit a 1.5. It's just not going to happen. But he said 2% annual increase or 2.5% is definitely within reason. So what I did is to give the information so that the elected officials can see is what those rates would be just for the lowest possible increase. So when you look at a couple of the vendors and the information, that's the absolute floor of what the rate would be. It's possible the rates could be higher if, in fact, say someone who said that they offered they were okay with a 1.5 floor if the CPI was 2% or 2.5%.
Now the vendors are all protected with the residential garbage because they're not affected by rate changes on the disposal of the garbage. but they would not be on the commercial cost of garbage dumping. Is that true?
How do you be protected?
Well, right now, this rate increase or their annual increase that they're allowed to have, since for residential, they're really doing it just for the worker and the truck and actually picking up the garbage. What it costs to dump the garbage is something we bear because we're a member of SWANK. On the commercial side, they can't dump commercial garbage into SWANK, so they have to find their own yards to dump that garbage. And that can go up and down
Yeah,
drastically.
I would imagine the vendors would have more information on that.
So their only remedy for collecting more money if garbage dumping spikes and quadruples in 5 years or 4 years is the CPI or the rate that they're suggesting that they go up every year. There's no pullout to say, well, dumping charges aren't included in that increase. If dumping charges go up for commercial, we can increase that higher than CPI. That's not in here. Correct?
No.
Okay.
And that, the proposed 1.5 to 3.5 was for both the residential and the commercial.
Right, but commercial's the only one that has a dumping aspect to it.
The cost on the vendor, correct?
Correct, okay.
Can I ask you to hang on? There are some people here that don't want to talk about garbage. So if we could
I
literally.
tried to protect them, and the lawyer wouldn't let us. Because, I'd sit here till midnight talking about this.
Well, we might leave you here to midnight. You can talk to yourself. It'll be on the record, so. Let's go with the warrants and then the public non-agenda matters and go back to the garbage if you want to. And I'm sure you will. Warrants, please.
Sure. Regular expenses for this period in the amount of $252,296.42. October 12th, 2018 payroll posting in the amount of $139,063.45. Police pension payments in the amount of $78,548.05. And total warrants in the amount of $469,907.92.
And 92 cents, well, that's good. The motion to approve as presented, the warrant list.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, take your roll call, please.
Alderman Ludwigson.
Aye.
Alderman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Dolick.
Aye.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Are we done up, what about this discussion of selection of topics for upcoming workshop meeting? We're going to add the
Staggered elections.
staggered elections for sure.
And we also have a request from staff to discuss and seek direction regarding sanitary sewer fee collections.
All right, that's an
Joe,
exciting one.
you were saying you needed direction by the November meeting, the first November meeting for garbage too, or no?
When
Would we
is
just
the
act on that, or?
Well, we'd like to, I thought we were going to go back to the garbage
Yes,
discussion.
we are.
so,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be
All
going
right,
back.
one, I believe, last thing on the rest of the agenda, public comments for non-agenda matters. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak to that?
Person's not here. Is he here?
Well, we'll get that too. I'm working on Mr. Elgauer. I'm sorry, could you repeat your name, please?
My name is Janusz Stanowski.
Oh, you are this
Yes.
person right here. Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
go ahead. Not long, but because you want to meet with the alderman also.
I came here as a Prospect Heights resident. I live here for 14 years. I am the resident of River Trace Association, where July 18 we have terrible fire. Everybody knows that. I am part of the River Trace Association Board of Directors, but what I do for a few months is completely not connected with my function in River Trace Association. I do that, what I do now, I want to explain you, just as a person, as a Christian, and as community member of River Trace. I try to help fire victims, especially the families who lost completely everything. 24 families lost, they were living at the upper level of the 3 buildings. They lost completely everything what they had until the fire. They have to rebuild their life from the scratch. And I try to help them since day one, since July 19. So far I collected through my effort contacting many charity organizations, churches. I am ethnically Polish, so I have some friends and people who I know from my business activity. I'm retired right now. I am 77 years of age. And through the Polish media, Polish radio station, TV, I announce foundation what me and the other member of board of directors, we open up in bank TCF, which is located in every jewel. We collect money through action in the Polish deli, Deli for You. I know personally the owner. And so far, I collected around $21,000, which I distribute between the fire victim owners. Last Saturday, I went I'm Costco member. I went to Costco in Mount Prospect, and what I saw, you can't believe, guys. 3 fire truck and around 20 firefighters. Every customer who was coming to Costco, they gave something like that, this voucher. They draw food. Every customer who came to Costco received this and bought something for the poor family in Mount Prospect. And this idea came to my head. I am Prospect Heights resident. I'm helping people, and I came here to ask you, Prospect Heights officials, is it any way that we can do the same thing, same action for fire victims of River Trace condominium? Like, for example, firefighters, it's possible to make contact with Costco customers on Saturday, which is the best business day. Deli for You, they have on every Wednesday, they have 20% discount for entire customers, and this is the most busy day in Deli for You. So if maybe Prospect Heights fire truck and Prospect Heights firefighters spend a few hours and draw the food for River Trace fire victims. We have Thanksgiving close coming. We have Christmas, and 24 families from River Trace, they really have problem to make ends meet. They started life from the beginning, from the scratch. Why don't help them? Why don't help other fire victims? Is it possible that you, as a people powerful in Prospect Heights, can do something to help?
Well, it's a valid request. It's a nice request. You're doing good things for good people. But this is not the venue to bring it up. We would help in any way we can. Dan Peterson is here. He's been very involved with River Trails for fire victims and for people that need mattresses, and God knows how many people helped out at your property. So, Mr. Skanowski, I have to direct you to the people that can talk to you and make some contacts and possibly be able to help you. We have one company that moves nothing but furniture, no charge for the furniture or to move to anyone from the fire victims. So we have helped a great deal, and we will continue to help. So thanks for coming this evening. I appreciate it.
I have one more question.
Your time ran out a long time ago.
It doesn't cost city of River Trace penny. It costs me because I just make something. Is it any chance that that announcement will be stick to the door, city hall, police department, fire station?
Work with Mr. Peterson. Anything is possible, but not everything gets done the way you'd like it to be done, so.
Okay, I will contact Mr. Peterson if he's
All right, well, you
the
have the
person
same here, Dan. Take this down.
who can address that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. I
I'll
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
give you a call tomorrow.
All right.
You have my
thank-
number, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I presume the rest of you are all really deeply involved with garbage, so that's my job here at City Hall. So let's do that. Where were we? Who had the floor last? Mr. You did, right? Where'd you go?
Yeah,
There you go.
we were talking about the annual rate increase and whether or not there was anything separate for the commercial garbage, and Peter had said no, that the only increase for commercial would also be within that, each of the vendors' proposed increases. The other thing, the last thing is the multiple rates, the single-family, townhome, and multifamily and commercial rates. I think in the past, when we first did this garbage contract 8 years, 10 years ago, however long it was, there was a lot of discussion between the aldermen and the different wards talking about, well, why should my townhouse, I don't use a lot of garbage, I shouldn't pay more, I should be less, and it was hard to come up with the rates. The good thing that this did, by having these multiple vendors, is it let the free market dictate what they thought was the best rate for each of the type of houses in garbage, or each of the type of collection. So at least now we know it's not something we have to come up with, it's something that the vendors have come up with as far as what the rate should be for each individual use. So I think that's good information to have, so that we don't have to try and decide what we should be charging for the different types of uses. As far as e-waste, I did like that program some of them had for e-waste pickup. Is that something that the city would do, that a resident would come here and say, I need something picked up, or would they just work directly with the vendor?
There were a couple proposals, curbside, where the individual or the resident or the customer would actually call and set up a pickup. We actually were kicking that around as far as price per item, like TVs up to 50 pounds, or one proposal was actually a container, like an 18-gallon tub for recycling that people could fill, or even just like a bag, because you figure, people have cell phones, small electronics that they want to recycle, nothing large like a 50-pound TV. So putting that like in a bag or something like that. So all three vendors did offer the electronic waste, the e-waste, at different prices, and you can see the pricing accordingly on the chart. One vendor even offered to host, like we do yearly through the Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook County, a e-waste shredding event. One vendor actually offered to do that as well, so that we would have two events for e-waste and for shredding.
As a member of Swank, we're able to go right to Swank's facility, which is fairly close to us, right on River Road by
Across from Maryville Academy.
By Maryville, yeah. And I was just there, as a matter of fact, last week to drop off probably the last rear projection TV in Prospect Heights. As big as it was huge. And when you pull up, they take it out. So it's a really good program they have for residents to just drive there. You pull in the building, you don't even get out of the car. They open the back, they pull it out. They got 4 or 5 people there working, pulling it out. So that we have a good program for that. The last thing I'll comment on is the recycling. I know that the bottom has fallen out on the value of recyclable materials, and it's really a beast of burden now more than it is something that's a good thing to do. But I think people are so used to doing it now, it's become, even for people like me that fight with my kids over what's recyclable and not, because they think everything is. But I think it's something we have to continue. I noticed that everybody is going to use the Swank recycling dumping, you know, to bring the material there. So I don't believe there's any changes planned for that. I was asked, is that really recycled anymore? Is it, or is it just dumped? Do they even dump it?
But for Swank?
Correct.
The issue is, and you're right, the bottom kind of fell out with recycling. One thing they're trying to do now is trying to clean up the recycling stream. So one thing, if you can call it a change, with going through Swank, is that they're going to be a lot stricter, but they're going to have a campaign, an educational campaign for the residents, so that residents really know what's recyclable and what isn't recyclable. I think people tend to err on the side of, well, if I recycle as much as I can, that's good for the environment. That, unfortunately, is not correct. If putting non-recyclable items in with recyclable items can actually taint the recyclable items, and now it all becomes garbage. So it doesn't help anybody, especially the environment, if that's what your plan is to do. So one thing, any of the vendors we choose, vendor we choose for the residential, or for at least for the residential collection process, will have to adhere to the new guidelines. And like I said, that's going to be an educational process through Swank as far as educating the public on what's recyclable, what isn't recyclable. There'll be audits of the carts, the recycling carts, just to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And there will be instances where people's recycling will not be picked up if it is tainted with non-recyclable items, and they'll put a placard on there explaining to them why it wasn't taken. That's for any vendor. So it's not like, you know, this vendor, that'll happen, and this vendor, it won't. So that'll be the new system going through, trying to kind of reboot and re-educate the public on recyclability, if that's even a word.
Thank you. My last couple of questions I'll call and talk to you about specifically, because I can't figure out how to ask them in a way that doesn't.
Absolutely. And the reason why, as Joel mentioned, that we do want to get this, a decision made as quickly as possible. The vendors don't want to, don't enjoy being kind of hanging out waiting. We like a decision made as quickly as possible. We do have time, but with our deadline, or the imposed deadline of November 14th, it just comes out perfectly that November 12th is the meeting. So we're hopeful that if the elected officials can look through, I would be more than happy to speak on the phone, come in my office, I'll stay late, I'll do whatever I have to. If you have any questions about the table or about the memo, or any questions that you just want an answer to, email me, call me, I'll be more than happy to, if I don't have the answer, to get the answer for you. And then hopefully we can move forward and especially give us your opinions on what you find is important and not, just like Alderman Ludvigsen did, so that we can kind of decide what is the best option for the city.
All right, Alderman Williamson, sorry.
I'll be faster than that.
Well, that's the most I've heard Joe talk in 8 years.
Single day or multiple day collection schedule, I personally don't care. I think that multiple days actually keeps them in town longer, so that if there's a missed pickup or something, they can take care of that. Day of the week, you know, Pat, just as you said, you like Friday, my wife said she likes Monday. Yeah. So, you know, different strokes for different folks. So I really don't have any point of contention with that. The residential versus commercial split, I would certainly like to see a single vendor get the entire contract rather than split it up. I think that provides more continuity and a single finger to point, and it's far less confusing. The unlimited landscape versus yard waste stickers, I believe this really only impacts wards 2, 3, and 4. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if 5 has any landscape pickup. But I, for one, don't want to see any yard waste stickers. I think it's a pain in the butt. And ultimately, in a town like this, would probably cost us more money rather than less, especially come fall and things like that. The annual rate increases, I thought that was plenty fair to go with the CPI. Of course, the people who agreed to a lesser rate, well, that was nice. I understand all the differences between that and the e-waste collection programs. I think everybody's got an e-waste, recycling program, and you can go to Home Depot and drop off your phone. There's 50 different outlets to do it. I don't know how big a benefit is to be able to throw it out in your own container and then have to house that container as often as you do it. What I would say is, you had made mention of auditing people's trash or recycling, and then there would be a sticker or a placard that would be placed on that. I guess a question for Republic Now is, when a tube TV sits out there, why aren't you doing that with that? Yeah, you can get up if you want. This is open conversation.
Thank you, Council. I'm Jacob DiLiberto. I'm a former U.S. Marine and new to Republic, so I'm going to be your dedicated account manager moving forward regardless of the RFP. So it's nice to meet you all. Regarding e-waste program, basically it's a subscription. So if somebody has a TV that they'd like to get picked up, they can pick up the phone, they can type it on the app that we have 24/7 availability, or they can call our customer service, so you can give them my cell phone number and I'll pick it up myself. So either way.
Just so you know, most of the guys that are throwing out their tube TV now aren't going to the internet.
They aren't going to the app. That's funny. It's a very
But I guess my point is, is there something in our current service where you could slap a sticker on it that says, we don't take this, call this number?
Yeah, absolutely. We send someone out to pick up the TV at any point if they want it. It's not an issue.
Okay. That was the only thing I wanted to address. Okay, and then to differentiate some of this stuff, Peter, this is a great worksheet and really gives me a good idea of the differences between the three. But I guess what is the most common? What do I really need to be paying attention to and focusing on in this spreadsheet? What is the most common commercial dumpster that we're using? Because I can see here that, one vendor doesn't even carry, a certain size. Obviously, we don't use that size.
What I can do is I actually have the current commercial, I would actually have all the information, the number of single-family, townhome, multifamily, but I also have the number of commercial entities that have, and the size dumpster that they're currently using. So I can get you that information. I just didn't put it on here, but I can get you those numbers.
Okay, so, I can assume that
if you do
a commercial, a strip mall. Okay, most of them are going to be 2-yard dumpsters. I'm assuming you're not going to have an 8-yard dumpster.
If you look at on the commercial, for the commercial recycling side, which is I'm sorry, I did not number these, but it's going to be starting on page 4. Under the value-added services.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see the solid waste, commercial solid waste collection pricing with the different vendors, but then you also see the charts, okay? That is actually the number of dumpsters or totes for commercial.
Oh, okay.
So
the 2-yard dumpster being the most common.
Correct. And then if you see actually what I did to kind of give it some context is what the proposed rates are with the actual number of customers to get a dollar amount of what it would be for that month. So those are monthly costs, and I see how it's broken down by the vendors. Same thing with the residential, I did that as well. So you can kind of get a dollar amount or a value to each vendor for both residential and commercial.
All right, and can I assume that whoever picks up the contract is delivering new cans?
Well,
We're not going to keep using the old can, or if Republic gets the contract again, do we get new cans again?
Well, to kind of answer
Just
that
my point
question.
is, I've had a garbage can for 12 years and it's broken. I would imagine you're
Well,
not
if,
the only
if,
one who has it.
if
so
you do have a broken garbage can,
You pay $25, you get a new one.
well, if it's broken, I'm sure you can contact Republic, and I know I don't have Republic where I live. I inherited a broken, a container with a broken lid, and I actually got a new container. Took some calling, but I actually got one. So, but
Well,
to
I
your
mean,
point.
It just says change cart fee, $25.
And our present contract has a change cart provision.
Correct.
Right
And
now, so I mean, we don't have to wait.
there's a 90-day provision in the contract, that is in our contract, that says that you could change, so say you have a 95-gallon and you never use it because your kids moved out, and you want to reduce that down to a 65, you can do that. There should be no charge in the 90 days. That cart charge, that the $25 or whatever it is, depending on the individual vendors, would only go into effect after the 90 days. That's written in that contract.
Okay, so, but whoever gets the contract, they're bringing new receptacles.
I would imagine if it went to the incumbent that there wouldn't, because
Yeah, I don't know if that'd be
because what you're talking is a matter of, there's 2,200 single-family homes, 750 townhomes, and 3,300 multifamily. If you're talking about replacing all that stock, if we go to a different vendor, yes, that will happen. If we go from the current vendor we have to another vendor, yes. But if we're staying with the same vendor, I would not expect that to happen. That, it just would be pointless. I understand you want a new container.
Why don't you let the vendor answer?
Okay, if you want, would you like to speak, sir?
Sorry.
So I'll make sure that you have a new garbage can on Friday, sir.
That's not where I was going.
And anyone else? Regarding what we can do, we are happy to work with the city administration and the council to arrange a opt-in program at a significantly discounted price. Obviously, these things aren't free to the manufacturer when we buy those cans. They're anywhere between $50 and $60. So we need to kind of incorporate that. But as a friend and a colleague of this community, we want to continue with our relationship. And one of the key ways we know to do that is to make sure the residents are happy and the aldermen are happy. So you can have my word, we will work out a reasonable discounted price that is something that no one else could offer. So not a worries there. And look for it Friday. I'll get your address later.
All right, everything else in your packet is more than enough information. I think it's perfect, so thank you very much.
Alderman Rosenthal.
Just a couple of things. The first one, are you defining are you defining e-waste? Is that paper and those types of consumables, or is it hardware as well?
It would not be paper, it would be electronics.
I'm sorry?
It would be electronics. E-waste?
Like
It's only electronics.
Like a computer?
And, yeah, and not every piece of electronics is actually recyclable.
Okay.
All right.
And my second question, you talked about a comparative analysis you did using Chicago, Kenosha, and I didn't get quite what you were doing there.
That is, let me get you the actual, what it is. I can't remember what the last one is, I apologize.
Okay.
But the,
It's the CPI?
it's the Consumer Pricing Index for Chicago, Kenosha, and I can't think of what the other one is.
Are they all
It's
different?
Indiana, but I just can't.
Are they
remember.
different, or is it a combined index?
It's one index.
Yeah, I'm concerned from a measurement point of view, we would be skewed because of Chicago. Chicago, has different rules. They have different things as regards unions and things like that. And I'm just concerned that that may be a little skewed, but I don't know if that's the only measurement you got. That's the
Well,
only-
there are other measurements that we can use. That was just the one that we've used in the past.
Okay.
But there is actually one specifically for waste that I believe Jacob would like to speak about.
I think it's very important for the village to understand that when we think of CPI, Consumer Price Index, we're really talking about things like butter, eggs, paper, things that actually don't affect certain industries. So the way that normal cities and municipalities do a index for their own services, something similar to water, sewer, trash, which can go depending for better or for worse. So particularly, that is something as an industry expert that we like to look at, that if it's in our partners' best interests because their price goes down, we want to honor that. Water, sewer, trash is a better index, but also on a budgetary issue, I think a fixed percentage rate is the probably most easy and effective way for a village staff to think about their price because they know what it'll be every year. So
Only if it's a good fixed rate.
I'm sorry?
Only if it's a good fixed rate.
So far as the fixed rate adjusts with what our costs are. The fuel tax, if the fuel tax goes.
I agree with what you're saying, that the CPI doesn't take in consideration.
Hey, Pat, I think that unless he's answering specific questions, if we're gonna give him the floor, we're gonna have to give everybody the floor.
But it just, okay, not specific to him, but the
But I
thing that's
guess my
different.
point is, we're asking questions to
Right,
him,
but the
and
thing that's
he's
different
coming
about
up and
this-
answering questions, explaining things on behalf of
Correct,
Republic, we need to give it to, you know, the other bidders.
Well, you started asking him questions specifically.
It's a fair point, Mr. Altman, fair point.
All right,
But
talk,
the CPI, just real quick, the vendors aren't paying for dumping garbage. So I know dumping garbage is unique, but that's not part of the contract. So they're only really paying for wages, equipment, and whatnot, not the dumping of the garbage, which is something that's
All right.
can be variable.
if I could interrupt. Mike, you're here? Why don't you come up and offer some opinions? And we have great knowledge of the company we have now, but you're with Flood Brothers, if I remember correctly. Correct. And we have Lakeshore here too, so other people should get a chance to talk.
Now we know who's here.
No, I was going to be speaking, so I don't have a formal presentation plan.
Well, no, just try to,
Touch on some of your
get a
topics.
little, right.
I'm Michael Flood with Flood Brothers Disposal and Recycling Services. One of 20 family members in a business that's evolved over 85 years that my great-grandfather started. We are 20 family members, over 180 employees, over 130 trucks. We operate out of our corporate office in Oak Brook Terrace, have a location in Carroll Stream, the west side of Chicago, and in McHenry County and Lake in the Hills. Many residents in our family live within Prospect Heights or in the surrounding community, so we're familiar with, your program and everything. As far as kind of what we've done in our proposal, tried to give you almost a similar program in place that you have now at a lower cost, keeping the day the same, and trying to keep the transition as simple as possible for the city of Prospect Heights. Transition may not be easy, but we've done a number of transitions just like some of the other haulers have. So I think we're all kind of keen on how to make this transition, avoid phone calls and emails to the alderman and city hall. I guess if there's anything specific you'd be interested in hearing.
All right, Alderman Dolan.
Most of my issues have been addressed. I just have one quick question going back to annual rate increases, and I'm speaking only of residential services. I know one vendor has a fixed rate, others have a range. I'm wondering if that range is across the board, an average with single-family, townhome, multifamily, or could it be, what I wouldn't want to see is if, for instance, you had a 1.5% increase for single-family homes, well, then you could charge like a 5% increase for multifamily. It still falls within that average. I would like to see some kind of an across-the-board rate increase or a cap of some sort for each of those. In other words, if I live in and represent only multifamily homes, units, and I wouldn't want to see someone who owns a multifamily apartment building seeing a higher rate increase than others in the community with the same provider. I would like to see some kind of a cap across the board or a fixed rate of increase. I wouldn't want, you understand what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. I think the way we interpreted the RFP that was put together was, that's for single-family, townhome, multifamily, and then the commercial.
And that would
It's
be
all
fine.
in there.
Yes.
It's not, we get to pick and choose, or you guys get to pick and choose who's getting the increase and who isn't, or who's getting more and less.
Right, okay, and that's my only question. Everything else I had was addressed.
All right, anything else on this side for Mr. Flood? You're okay? Alderman Williamson? All right, let's have
Thank you.
Lakeshore come up for a moment. Thank you, Michael.
Good evening, everybody, members of the council, mayor. Appreciate the opportunity. I don't want to subvert the process here. I know we're trying to be very cautious of that, so I won't give you a long CV on my company. I'll just tell you that we've implemented more, done more transitions over the last 5 years than any of our haulers. We're very effective. We're pros at that. We know exactly what we're doing. Specifically to the question that was asked regarding CPI, just echo what my respected competitor said. I mean, we're tethered by the contract. We have floors and we have ceilings, and we can't go beyond that. We can't toil with that at all, or we're essentially in breach of contract. So it doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't discriminate versus single family versus multifamily. It's essentially, it's a fixed number that we generate by, again, CPI, and that's generally Kenosha, Chicago, Naperville, but that also tends to change geographically too. But that's all very transparent. We would like any municipal contract, we would alert you within 60, 90 days before that price increase took effect. It wouldn't be abrupt. People wouldn't just start seeing different pricing. You would have some time to alert residents, vice versa on our end. So hopefully that helps answer your question. Great.
Treasurer Tibbetts, do you have something for Lakeshore?
Just a couple general things.
Okay.
Okay, thanks much.
Thank you for coming out. What's left regarding garbage and hauling and size of containers?
A couple things about garbage.
You have something to say about garbage?
Yeah.
Oh.
But not specifically to that gentleman.
All right, well.
Yeah, okay. Am I on?
Yeah, because Patrick wants to stay here till midnight, so we're going to keep talking.
Midnight either. I just wanted to point out, I was around the last time we did the garbage truck contract, and one of the issues was the date, that means the day of the week, rather. And I think Friday was really considered the less expensive day, Pat. Do you recall that? That was the reason?
I know we specifically picked that day. I don't know what the reason was.
I think that was the reason. So I'm wondering if there was, in the whoever made the proposal for, I'll address this to Peter, whoever made the proposal for the multi-day, did they nail down which days would be applied to the residential townhomes and multifamily?
One day would be, in fact, Friday.
Which one?
That was up for discussion. Because again, they separated into three sections. Primarily the single family up north of Camp McDonald Road. Then there was Rob Roy, along with some other single family homes. And then there was the east side, the multifamily.
Would it be up to their discretion as to which?
No, they actually said we will work with you and, decide which, if the Rob Roy section wants, if that's more advantageous to have that as Friday, or the single family, or the multifamily, they were willing to work with us.
So the aldermen battle it out as to which day is the best for each area? I mean, how does that work?
Well, we put that in because, as we discussed earlier, I mean, we were trying to get the best price for the city, just as you did 12 years ago. And the flexibility was because carriers have capacity, just as I suspect 12 years ago, Republic had the capacity to do it on Friday at the best rate. I've been through this too many times, and this will be my last one. I'm very pleased about that. But you'll go through, if my experience says, you go through some bumps. There will be people that will forget that it used to be whatever, but nobody dies through the process. And all of these vendors had said that, and they're also typically, because I've been through this many times before, there's that person that forgot to put it out, but then they'll blame the carrier for not coming out. Well, 35 years later, these people have GPS in their trucks. They can tell where that truck went, but they'll still come back and take care of it. All of these vendors, that was one of our key questions. And they said they understand that they've all been through transitions before. And we might have some bumps. And I also have been through transitions where maybe Wheeling Road is the cutoff, or maybe maybe it's Camp McDonald. I mean, that's something we can work out. And for maybe about a month or 6 weeks, there might be some bumps. But then after that, it works out. So, and I have complete confidence in all of these. Each one of these groups come with excellent reputations from the communities that they serve. So.
Okay, well, I'd like to make one suggestion. I mean, people tend to be creatures of habit. Right. And, you know, I've been hardwired that the garbage goes out on Fridays. But, you know, the multi-families have a dumpster, I think, behind their units, and they just, I don't think they really care when they picked up the garbage exactly, what day it is. So I would lobby for a continuation of Friday for the single family and the townhomes as well.
And if you take a close look at the spreadsheets, that may be a moot point. You may, I'm just going to suggest, for lack of a better reason, let's just make a recommendation. If the city is interested in price, then I would say that the staff recommendation is that one vendor stands out on a total price basis for residential service, and another vendor stands out for lowest price on a commercial basis. I'd seriously give a hard consideration of splitting it. And that way you can come back to both your commercial users and residential users. Said the city went through a competitive, fair, equitable process. We came up with the best price from this vendor for residential and the best price from this vendor for commercial services.
The other thing I was going to bring up is that I've been very conscious about recycling, and I know there's issues with recycling, and we've been publicizing the fact that people are putting things in the recycling that doesn't belong there, but it's really hard to figure out sometimes what belongs there and what doesn't. I called up Swank a month or two ago because I had a toilet plunger that actually broke, and it was a rubber plunger from, like, 1950 or something like that. And the rubber broke, and I thought, well, why throw the rubber in the garbage bin? Isn't that recyclable? So I called them up. I said, is the rubber recyclable? They said, yeah, but we don't have any way of recycling it because, you know, how many people throw out toilet plungers every day, right? So I'm like, okay, I get that. But so that's, so it's essentially garbage.
I know. To make that call.
Yeah, but, you know, these are the questions that come up. I mean, my wife tends to throw styrofoam containers in the recycling. It doesn't belong there.
No.
And so, you know, it's a hard one to figure out. So I suggested to them that they do a whole bunch of videos about what's recycling and what's not. You know, I mean, their bias, I think, is when in doubt, put it in the garbage rather than in the recycling. So
let me just tell you, Rich, in Arizona, where you go to the same place I go, on the top of the garbage can, they have a paste on.
Yeah.
This is recyclable, this is not.
That's right. They do.
It's
They're pretty good at garbage out there, by the way, I think, way better than we are.
Yeah.
But nevertheless. Okay, the other thing is the spreadsheet of the increases, Peter?
Sorry?
You know, the year 1, year 7, what percentage did you use to calculate?
Right above that, you'll see lowest minimums. So if you look at that, for the first one, so it says residential rate with minimum, that has the 3 different.
You used it was 3% for the first vendor?
Correct.
And what percentage did you use for the second one?
It says 1.5.
Well, why
that was their floor.
But it could be 3.
Correct. That's why it says minimum.
He used
I know,
he used the lowest rate it could be for each year.
And I mentioned that it could be higher, and again, this was 7 pages? If I did every single thing, it would have been.
No, I'm not expecting that, but I'm just saying to compare apples to apples, maybe 3% should be used for all of them.
No, he used the lowest rate for each one.
But somebody stated that they would never be at the lowest rate because of the change in the CPI.
They stated what their floor would be.
What?
They stated what their floor, we'll go over it afterwards. You're getting into,
No, I'm just trying to compare, you know, equally
I-
competitive.
right, I agree, but without getting into details, it's.
All right,
I understood what he did.
I'll
You and
take
I
it up
can
with
talk
you then.
about it, Yeah.
I'll take it up with you. I think that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Here's the thing, we'd like to see you give direction to staff as to who you want. I don't have the pedal of this. I don't vote, so I have some ideas who I'd like to see get it, because I've reviewed everything. But I'd like to get this moving, because you've got a deadline date, and the vendors have deadlines also. We're not the only ones looking for, a price on garbage removal. So if that's acceptable, that's the way I'd like to proceed. So if we have some last comments, I'll take them, but I think we've heard quite a bit.
And just, Joe, we want to get this on the agenda at the next meeting, so.
That's correct.
Just keep that in mind, that we need also to draft a resolution approving a contract, so.
And absent direction from the council between now and the next meeting, Joe will put out a recommendation, correct?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Mr. Mayor, are we supposed to give our recommendations independent of this meeting to Joe at some point? Is that what
like
it is?
in a few days.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but
Well, for me, it's gotta
certainly
be 2 days.
independent, otherwise, what do we got? We might as well vote now. All right, Joe, what
That's
else do
fine.
we have for tonight?
That's it, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We have 3 so moves and 1 second. We are adjourned